Good evening, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Thank you for tuning in to the Megyn Kelly Show. As you may know by this point, there is breaking news out of Pennsylvania, Butler, Pennsylvania, to be specific, this evening, where former President Donald Trump appears to have been the victim of an attempted assassination. He was grazed by a bullet, according to local authorities. The Butler County District Attorney, Richard Goldinger, telling the Washington Post that Trump was grazed by gunfire but is safe. We are receiving similar messages from the Secret Service that Trump is safe, that he's been removed from the scene, but he was bloodied and he was grazed by gunfire. The latest reporting out of the Washington Post, again citing the local district attorney from Butler County, is that an audience member was killed and the shooter is dead as well. Another person said to be in serious condition, according to this prosecutor. Again, this is from the prosecutor to the Washington Post. To reiterate, Trump grazed by gunfire, an audience member was killed. The shooter is also dead. Killed, we understand, by either Secret Service or by local law enforcement, who we believe unleashed fire once the former president had been grazed. Another person in serious condition at this hour, and that Donald Trump is receiving medical care at this hour. And I'm sure it will be very thorough, even though he looks like he's all right. They need to make absolutely sure that that's the case. We're going to play the video for you now as we have it. You will hear two shots at the top, and we believe that that is the shooter. We believe at this hour that what comes after is return gunfire by law enforcement. And in an incredible scene, you will see President Trump get back to his feet, fist up in the air, appearing to say the words, "fight," and the crowd breaks out in chants. Watch.
We see something that said, take a look at what happened. Oh. Get down, get down, get down, get down.
Move to the spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here. Move it to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Shooter's down. Shooter's down.
Are we good?
Shooter's down.
Shooter's down. Are we good to move?
Shooter's down. We're good to move.
Clear.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay. My shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
Wait.
And there they exit with the former president into what appeared to be an SUV, though we don't see that final moment. An absolute showing of resilience and strength by Donald Trump, who under the absolute worst of circumstances managed to stop the Secret Service as they were escorting him out of a dangerous scene, saying to them, first, "Where are my shoes?" And then saying, "Wait," putting his right fist in the air with blood covering his face because it's very clear he was hit. Again, the word they're using is grazed along the ear, the right ear, blood on his face, pumping his fist in the air. And it seemed clear to me he mouthed the word "fight, fight," repeatedly. And the crowd broke out into chants of USA. For the listening audience now, the American flag being waved in the air above that fist. This is a close-up of the grazing along the upper part of his outer right ear. And you could hear the former president speaking. He sounded lucid and okay. You know, the comment, "Where's my shoes?" You know, he wanted his shoes, makes you wonder whether he was confused about what exactly had just happened to him, as opposed to just getting the heck out of there, as someone was clearly trying to take the president's life. We kick off our special coverage right now with Rich Lowry of National Review, editor of National Review. Rich, it's a shocking moment in American history in the context of this race and in the context of the messaging, almost universal, unless you're a fan of Donald Trump's or a fair cover of him like you are, about the messaging around him, the rhetoric around him. I'm not blaming this on rhetoric, but we would be derelict if we did not mention how it has been dialed up. And in particular, it has been dialed up as I think the left feels this election starting to slip away. That's not to say that caused this. We don't know who pulled the trigger. It's just there's been an atmosphere around this guy that has been dialed to an 11 for far too long. And many of us believed it was only a matter of time before someone acted on it. Stunning pictures here. This one is of President Trump on the ground, bloody, with his hand nearby his face, trying to recover from what could have been an assassination. Your thoughts on what we're witnessing today?
I want to weep for my country. It's just, it's horrible. There are no words for how terrible this is, and how more terrible it could have been. I mean, we were centimeter, how far away from President Trump's head being blown off at a rally on live television. And these are moments, Megyn, the reason why, assassinations fascinate people, one of the reasons, history telescopes down to inches and seconds, right? If JFK's driver had sped up rather than slow down to see what was happening after the first one or two shots, JFK would have survived that assassination attempt. If the Archduke Ferdinand, they threw a bomb at him, which didn't work. If he just said, we're not doing anything else, but he had kind of a Trump-like spirit. He's like, we're going through this whole ceremony in Sarajevo, I don't care. And when he was heading back, actually when we go to the hospital to see the people hurt from the bomb, if the car had not made a wrong turn down a narrow street that it couldn't get out of, that it happened to be that Gabriel Princip, one of the assassination team, was just standing there not knowing what to do, was standing right there at that moment, he would have lived, and all of history would have been different. That was the most consequential assassination in world history. But that moment of Trump pumping his fist shows what a sense of the moment, right? We get in fender benders where your head goes back a little bit, and you're kind of shocked. You don't know what happened to you, or it takes a little while to get your senses. To know that what that moment called for was strength and reassuring his supporters. When you're right, how does he know? The Secret Service thinks the threat's been neutralized. That's why they're picking him up and taking. How does he know, right? He's just been inches from being killed. How does he know? That is an image that will live throughout American political history.
Rich, I don't know about you, but I feel infuriated right now. I am angry over what has been done to this man. You and I sat together in 2015, and National Review said, not Trump, not this guy. Here we are all these years later. I see him so differently. Yes, he's got character flaws, of course, but this is the embodiment of strength in the face of an unbelievable onslaught, emotional, financial, when it comes to his freedom, and now his life, literally with a bullet having shot him in the head. His fist is in the air, and he's telling the crowd and all of us, fight for your country, fight for what we're all in this for. Don't let them shoot you down. Don't let them shoot down your ideals. Don't let them ruin the country. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah. So high politics is about, it's about policy and ideas, but a lot of it's about emotion. And this is a guy, one reason we couldn't stop him when we tried in the primaries in 2016 is he understood a crowd. He understood the moment. He got feeling and could play off of it. And this is just the very pinnacle of this. That was just an epic reaction. And again, it will never be forgotten. And what you opened with on the rhetoric, who knows who the shooter was? But if you literally think he's Hitler, that's what they're telling us, right? The president of the United States, incumbent, is telling us that, and maybe in not so many words. What's the proper reaction? Just voting against him and hoping things turn out right? If you take it seriously, I think we've learned a lot of Democrats actually don't take it seriously, but unfortunately a lot of people do. If you take it seriously, what do you do? If it's existential for American democracy, for our system of government, our way of life, what do you do? Maybe you do whoever that apparent shooter on the rooftop, maybe you do what he did.
There is video, I don't know if we have it or can show it, of a shooter, forgive me, we don't know that this is the shooter, of what appears to be a man lying on a rooftop nearby, and the reports online are that that's the shooter and he's dead. He's motionless and he's lying down. I've spoken with somebody who was at the rally, and we're going to have him call in talking about the security, but it was tight, as it would be for any Secret Service event with the former president, never mind the leading contender for the GOP nomination, which of course takes place next week as a formal matter. And so this person, in order to have a gun, Rich, anywhere near shooting range of this president,
yeah,
I mean, it does make you wonder how he did it, whether he had help, how on earth anybody was within shooting range of this man, Donald Trump, from a rooftop. All of that is going to be investigated. But you've got to say kudos to local law enforcement or the Secret Service, whoever took this guy out, because it all.
Yeah. So all the professionals say, and it just seems as though just watching as an amateur, their reaction to this was pitch perfect. I mean, they immediately go on Trump. They're protecting him with their bodies, which inherently moving act, putting themselves on the line. But there are going to be questions. According to Twitter, who knows? Things are going to change. We're going to learn more. As we speak. Just during this segment, probably we're learning more. But how is it? There are indications that people are pointing to this guy on the rooftop, and he got the shots off before the Secret Service got him. Maybe it was unavoidable. Who knows? But there are going to be a lot of questions. So it looks like the reaction was a Secret Service success, but I think there'd be questions about how this guy was able to get within range. And initially, it seemed like there's some speculation. Maybe it's a BB, because when you get shot in your ear, it's not just a little blood, right? It's a horrible event. And it seemed as though no one else was hurt. But now, of course, we've gotten reports of other people in the crowd tragically hurt. We've seen that video of the Trump supporter who was there, and his emergency room doctor, I believe, was trying to save someone with a grievous head wound and didn't. So this was a serious assassination attempt. And if anyone comes this close to being killed that's under Secret Service protections, there are going to be a lot of critical questions afterwards.
We have that video. Again, this is of an ER doctor who was on the scene. Let's take a listen.
That's exactly where I heard him come from.
What did you see, sir?
I heard the shots. I thought it was firecrackers to begin with. Somebody over there was screaming, he's been shot, he's been shot. So I made my way over. I said, I'm an emergency department physician. Let me help you. The guy had spun around, was jammed between the benches. He had a headshot here. There was lots of blood, and he had brain matter there.
Oh, no.
And so I got him. There's a helicopter coming in to get him. I got people there really helpful. I got
Was there only one person shot that you saw?
Then I did CPR, did chest compressions, as well as I breathed for him.
One person.
I was the only one
you
who
guys.
did
We
it.
need to evacuate everybody.
Oh, that's horrible. I mean, that is horrifying, Rich. And we don't know it. We don't have the angle straight, but clearly, as you point out, within a couple of centimeters, that could have been President Trump. And God, prayers go out to the family of the Trump supporter. That's how it appears, who was shot and killed. Just there to support a president in advance of an election, not to have his brain matter spilled out all over the ground. What is this country coming to, Rich?
Yeah, talk about an offense against American democracy, to attend what's become kind of a civic ritual for half the country, these Trump rallies, which are so epic and iconic, and be killed is just, it's beyond words. It's just horrific and profoundly wrong. And again, we're tremendously lucky that Trump himself wasn't killed. And it'd be a human tragedy, a family tragedy, just for him and the people around him. But it would just be an unbelievably awful thing for the country, because these assassinations, they are deranging events, and our politics is deranged already. It would get much, much worse. I mean, we're still arguing over who killed JFK, right? 50 or 60 years later. So this is why it's extremely important to make sure this never, ever happens. And whatever the security arrangements were going into this, obviously they need to be heightened. But Trump, there was a big thing on the January 6th commission. Oh, he didn't want the people to be magged or to go through electric detectors on January 6th. It's because he wants to be out there. He wants the crowd to be big and to have a good time and not have to wait forever. And he trusts them, right? The reason when this was a big scandal that Trump supposedly wanted people to bring weapons in proximity to the Capitol, someone was telling me he always joked with the Secret Service about that. These are my people. Just let them in. It'll be fine. But anyone who's out there in any crowd like that, no matter how much Secret Service protection is, you are ultimately putting your body on the line. And we saw this dramatic evidence of that this afternoon.
And Rich, here is the report that I got from. He is the father of my friend. His name is Larry Wood. And he said that there were tens of thousands there by his estimation, that he heard a single gunshot. He and his wife were seated farther back, then another, then a pause, and then the rapid fire, that there were state police everywhere. And I asked him about the security, and he said it was tight, and that they were forced to go through a magnetometer. And even they, as an older couple, were not allowed to bring in, his wife had a long umbrella and she couldn't bring it in, right? So they understand it always amps up when the former president is there, and it amps up even more as he inches closer and closer to becoming the nominee again. So they wouldn't let her in with the long umbrella. So they had to be seated farther back. And then they saw what we saw, which was he appeared to get hit from on the right side from a shooter who was off to the right. And then the crowd went nuts. I mean, people started to realize, he started to realize, he said first he thought it was maybe fireworks. He wasn't sure. And then they realized it was gunshots and that they needed to get out of there. And you think about, it's not just Donald Trump. It's not just this poor Trump supporter who appears to have been murdered today. Forget the shooter. It is the old. It is men and women who are just out there to support their country, their preferred candidate, to show their love of the Stars and Stripes days after July 4th and what they think it stands for by potentially voting for this man. And they get scared to within an inch of their lives running for their safety because they showed up at a Trump rally. That's what they did today. That's what Larry and his wife did today, to show up at a Trump rally in Pennsylvania, the heart of the nation, part of the heartland, and probably the most critical state in this election. As in another universe, Rich, we hear every other day that Trump's Hitler, that he's the demon. We hear from the president himself this week that it's time to put a bullseye on Trump. I'm not blaming this on Joe Biden, but I would be remiss in my duty if I did not point out that he just on July 8th said to a group of Democrats whom he was trying to shore up about his mental acuity, quote, "We're done talking about the debate. It's time to put Trump in a bullseye." The left, the headlines in the New York Times, Rich, when Sarah Palin had what looked like a gun sight on certain districts prior to Gabby Giffords being shot, led to litigation that went on for years about whether she had been the subject of what she called a blood libel. And now you've got the sitting president who's been so loose with his language. He called Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist, despite the fact that there was zero evidence for that and none of it was borne out in that trial. And he said it's time to put Trump in a bullseye days ago. It's just totally irresponsible.
Yeah, so if the Sarah Palin standard applies, and of course it never does, it only applies to people on the right. President Biden would be blamed for this. So many other people on the left would be blamed for this. They shouldn't call Trump a Nazi because, one, it's untrue, and two, it does work people up in a way that's extremely unhealthy and potentially dangerous. So they should stop it, but they never will, because it's so useful to them. It makes them feel good. They like the sound of those words coming out of their mouths, and a lot of them have just simply lost their minds. So you'd hope there'd be a return to sanity. On Twitter now, all the statements are, let's cool down the rhetoric. They're not going to, that's going to last 24 hours, and then we'll be back to the same thing again.
Here's what they're saying, Rich. It's taken the president over an hour to finally put out a statement. Barack Obama put out a statement before Joe Biden did. I understand when you're the president of the United States, you need to be careful. It's more important what Joe Biden says than it is what Barack Obama says. But I understand it took too long, and Barack Obama should not have gone first. Barack Obama, for what it's worth, said as follows: there is absolutely no place for political violence in our democracy. Although we don't yet know exactly what happened, we should all be relieved that former President Trump was not seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Heal your own party, sir. Heal your own party. He finishes it with, Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery. And this from the president, Joe Biden, moments ago. I have been briefed on the shooting at Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania. I'm grateful to hear that he's safe and doing well. I'm praying for him and his family and for all those who are at the rally as we await further information. And it looks like, was that signed by Jill and Joe? Trying to see. Oh, no. Jill and I are grateful to the Secret Service for getting him to safety. There's no place for this kind of violence in America. We must unite as one nation to condemn it. This is We Get News per CBS and Ed O'Keefe, that a Joe Biden campaign official tells CBS News the Biden campaign is now pausing all outbound communications, working to pull down their television ads as quickly as possible. Of course, they would have to, Rich. That would be standard in an event like this.
The statement's fine. It's not particularly eloquent or moving, but it's fine. It's what you'd say, kind of a replacement level statement about this kind of event. But can I come back, Megyn, to the reaction of the crowd? Because I thought that was very telling. And you noted how they started chanting USA. I think there are three things notable. One, a lot of these people in the front, they were standing up too. They were not going to be cowed, right? Then they chant USA, this patriotic reaction. And then in one of the videos you've seen over and over again from the front as Trump's being led down the steps, you see as he's going towards the beast, there are a couple guys, and they give the finger to, I think, back towards the media, or just in general. So I think that's also very telling. That's the natural reaction of defiance that a lot of Trump supporters are going to feel, right? And if there was any doubt about the enthusiasm for Trump, there's none now. There's none now.
No. I mean, we said after the lawfare, many people said we'd walk over broken glass, to vote for him at this point, just as a statement about who we are as a country, even if Donald Trump is necessarily your preferred candidate, he's not your perfect candidate. Now, I mean, I've got to ask you how this changes the politics, Rich. And this is not confirmed. This is from Charlie Kirk, who's very, very tight with all things Trump and all Team Trump, who says he's seeing reports that President Trump will be at tonight's UFC fight with Dana White. Warrior spirit. I mean, because it's Donald Trump, it's possible. You can't rule that right out and say, no chance.
I'd probably bet on it. I mean, the other thing, go back there tomorrow. Go hold a bigger rally there tomorrow. It'd be another Trump-like move. But this is Trump. Yeah.
We got to talk about the politics for a minute, because all of my friends were texting me and I was texting them. And the number one thing I was hearing was Trump just won the presidency. Like the Donald Trump voters, there's nothing that will keep them away on election day. It doesn't matter how long the lines are. It doesn't matter what the weather is. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. They will be there. This will activate the establishment wing of the Republican Party. This will activate right-leaning independents. It will be a message. It will be the middle finger that we saw at that rally to anybody who would behave like this, and the people who behaved so irresponsibly in creating the messaging about him, comparing him to mass murderers over and over and over. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, there'll be a bump based on sympathy, and then it'll go into the convention, maybe be indistinguishable from a bump he gets at the convention. But the convention itself, there'll be moments we've never seen before, right? No one has walked onto a convention stage within days, having been the target of a serious assassination attempt. I mean, the roof will blow off the place. So if there is any doubt about the get out the vote effort, you probably don't need one, right? You probably don't need one. But I do think a lot of people in this race are kind of dug in. This will increase the odds of Trump winning, but I'm just hesitant to ever say it's put away. I mean, we saw what happened with Joe Biden at that debate. Obviously, you called it right away that there are going to be efforts to dump him. But you had a Washington Post poll that had the race tied, and an NPR poll that had Biden ahead too. I think both of those are probably outliers. That's not really where the race is, but it just shows a lot of people are going to vote for Joe Biden no matter what. So I was still, on the Veep speculation, the reporting has been Trump's been focused on, I don't need a governing pick. I need an electoral pick. Someone who's just going to help me get this done. And I would still have that attitude even after this horrific event.
Oh my gosh. I know you're a praying man. You're a Christian, as am I. And I know we're both praying for President Trump and for the families of the fan who appears to have lost his life. And we will learn more at any moment about the shooter and his background. Rich, don't go too far, please. Would love to come back to you. Thank you so much for being with us on our breaking coverage. Really appreciate it. I want to get to Eric Bolling, who is close with Mr. Trump, has been close with the Trump campaign, and has been following all of this as well. Eric, Tucker said it. I said it. You said it. Many people who have been watching the escalation against Trump in every forum. It's not like a random newspaper article or a passing comment by Sarah Palin. It's everywhere in the media that he's the devil, that he's Hitler, that literally our democracy is on the line, that there will be no more America if he wins. And it's been grossly irresponsible. Before I bring you in to react to it, let me just show you. This is Tucker. He said this to us. He said this to a few, but here, is this Tucker? Yeah, this is Tucker with Trump. Watch this.
Mm-hmm. Started with protests against you, massive protests, right. Organized protests by the left, and then it moved to impeachment twice.
Right.
And now indictment. I mean, the next stage is violence. Are you worried that they're going to try and kill you? Why wouldn't they try and kill you, honestly?
They're savage animals. They are people that are sick, really sick. You have great people in the Democrat Party. You have great people that are Democrats. Most of the people in our country are fantastic, and I'm representing everybody. I'm not just Republican. But I've seen what they do. I've seen the lengths that they go to. But these people are sick people. These are people that I think they hate our country. You want to know the truth?
Just to reiterate, a spokesman for the Secret Service tonight saying Trump is safe right now, for those just joining us after an incident occurred at his rally. He is safe. He did not provide further details. Members of the Secret Service removing the press and declaring this a crime scene, which indeed it is. Eric, your reaction to the President of the United States, the former President of the United States, and presumptive GOP nominee being the victim of an attempted assassination hours ago.
And a friend, and a personal friend. Megyn, I heard it. I thought it was, must have been some sort of joke. To watch it. I mean, the video, just watch when he realizes a bullet just grazed his ear, he starts to get down. Listen, they've tried to assassinate this man's character. They've tried to assassinate his bank account. They've tried to imprison him. And now they've tried to literally assassinate the man when all the other ones failed and this one failed too. There's a path of destiny, let's call it that. If you're a God-fearing person, God's looking down and said 1/4 of an inch, maybe a millimeter, couple millimeters or a centimeter to the right, he's done. He's gone. It's over. And then what? Where's the country? So the destiny's set. If Rich Lowry doesn't want to do it, I'll do it. It'll be a slam dunk. It'll be a landslide win. Maybe nothing we've seen since Mondale lost 49 states to Reagan in 1984. So the presidency's over. But question is, are they finished? Are they done trying to kill a man? I don't know. Will there be another assassination attempt? Will they wait till he's president, then do it? Is this a group? Is this a lone wolf? You know, psychotics. People are saying it's an Antifa member. The guys, you know, some of the pictures that were circulated look like he was tactical gear.
Unconfirmed. We're not gonna mention anybody's name, but yes, there are all sorts of rumors, as there always are after this kind of an event on the internet.
But will they do it again? Will they try again? And my guess is sadly yes. And frankly, Trump, he just likes to get out amongst the people. He'll go into a Chick-fil-A or a Cuban bakery in Miami. Tell the Secret Service to stop. He's getting out. He leaves himself so vulnerable. But I think Elon Musk said he's the toughest president since Theodore Roosevelt, also, who just won the election.
That's how this feels. There's literally been bloodshed now from the former president. A man has lost his life, or a woman. We don't know the sex of the Trump fan who, according to the local prosecutor, has been killed on the scene. Again, the information is that the shooter is dead as well, and we will be getting more information on what I presume is a him in the hours and days to come. Just getting more and more detail here. There are some eyewitnesses wondering how many shooters there were. As you see, we saw this after JFK. I mean, here we are all these years after JFK, 60 years, we're still speculating about how many shooters were at the scene. There will be a full investigation on what direction the shots came from and whether it was more than one. There is something, again, I'm not blaming this. That's a yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I just want to jump in when you were talking, you're reading, and I'm thinking, Megyn, at this moment, that the left paints the Trump, the MAGA supporter, as an extremist. They're violent extremists, and they go apoplectic every time Trump, says one of his throwaway lines. I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, and they'd still vote for me. He does it to just have fun. I mean, it's a funny guy. He talks in these metaphors and whatnot, but they take it literally. And the bottom line, the reality is, they just tried to take out the leading and Republican contender for the United States presidency. And that couldn't have been someone from the right. I'll just say it may be too early for, what about them? But good Lord, if it was Biden, they'd be all over Trump saying it's his fault. It's Trump's fault.
100%. That's exactly right. And look at what they've done. I mean, Tucker was outlining some of it in that question to Trump, but they've indicted the man 4 times. They've weaponized the justice system at the federal and state level against him in a truly unprecedented move that we went almost 250 years without doing in this country. They sued him and they shut down the Trump organization in New York, the city that he loves, the city in which he came up, the city that he put on the map in some certain ways over the years. And it turned on him and crushed his business thanks to this rabid attorney general who completely tried to bring him down based on some law that was never used in this way before. They put, this past week, Steve Bannon in jail for a contempt of Congress charge. Peter Navarro, too. Merrick Garland, the attorney general, is in contempt of Congress. The same thing, and isn't going to jail. Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress when Barack Obama was, and didn't go to jail. This is at most turned into a civil thing under most presidents. If you're in contempt of Congress, you don't turn over, you don't give them the testimony they want. Only when you're a Trump appointee does it become a matter for you to be behind bars. And while we're on the subject of Steve Bannon, he too repeatedly has warned that they're going to try to take Trump out. And indeed, he sits behind bars right now, unable to react to this because he's been jailed by these very same people, and Trump now was grazed by a bullet.
They're starting to realize, I think, the people that who fought this whole idea that Biden was the grand unifier. They weren't. They never were. They were violent in the summer of 2020, and they looked the other way and they said that wasn't violent. That was peaceful protest. They called January 6th an insurrection and a threat to democracy when summer of 2020 was far more violent and more deadly and more expensive than January 6th was. The unfair, the bias in the media and really the zeitgeist is incredible. Finally, they're starting to come around. The celebrities have realized Biden can't win. But this, let's see if they step up to the plate and say, we were wrong. We blamed the right for being violent extremists. And the only violence I've seen right now in this 2024 has been inflicted on Donald Trump, not on Joe Biden or anyone else.
The media reaction.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's been disgusting so far.
Yeah.
The CNN headline, while they were on the air, and it was very clear that we had heard gunshots and, they were repeated. The CNN headline on their politics site was Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. After he falls. The description of the level of gravity being used by Wolf Blitzer earlier did not match the moment. Sometimes this happens, and it's always sad when it happens. Like it was somebody throwing an egg at Donald Trump. The man was shot centimeters away from being killed, and 2 people were killed, the shooter and an innocent. You do not say he fell off the stage. You do not say, it's sad, when this kind of thing, but it does happen. When does it happen? Lincoln was assassinated. JFK was assassinated. Ronald Reagan got shot in front of our very eyes and survived. Donald Trump got shot. This thing doesn't just happen. There are decades, thank God, between this kind of thing. It's a massive news story, and there's a reason for it, Eric. Wolf Blitzer knows that. CNN knows that. It's their hatred for him that makes it hard for them to even get the proper emotion out on a night like this.
I was waiting to see if you're just a human being. Forget President Biden. Just you see this happen to your opponent. You get up in front of the American people and say, "Stop! This is not right. We don't do this here. This is not what America is about. Represents." It was at least an hour, if not an hour and a half, before that statement got released that looked like some aide wrote it and maybe even used AI or chat GPT to write the thing. Cold, insensitive. They're not, they're done. Their goose is cooked. But I'm not suggesting we wanted to hear, Megyn, what Joe Biden had to say about it, but it would have been the right thing to do. RFK Jr. got out within minutes. Within minutes, he made a statement. This isn't right. We have to denounce violence and all, coming from all directions. So Biden took an hour and a half at least, maybe longer, and then released a statement that, I don't know, sounded a little bit more political than actual human to me.
Very generic. And by the way, this is the same man, Joe Biden, who will not authorize Secret Service protection for RFKJ, who, given the polls, is at least in the double digits, which is remarkable for a candidate running as an independent. Why is he running as an independent, even though he's a Democrat? Because the Democrats rigged the system such that he couldn't get on any Democrat primary stage or balloting as a Dem.
Yep.
And has been under serious threat, according to him and his campaign. And yet, notwithstanding the fact that his father was assassinated, that his uncle was assassinated, and that he's facing threats and is a Kennedy, nope, Joe Biden said no. Right now, we are just receiving an on-camera statement from the President of the United States. Joe Biden made it on cam. The comments run 2 minutes. Let's watch.
So what we know now. I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with his doctors. Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to him shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that the people who, and we have more detail to come relative to other people maybe injured in the audience. I don't have all that detail. We'll make that available to you. I may be able to come back a little later tonight, but we'll put out a statement if I'm not able to give, if it's not convenient for you all. But the bottom line is, the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully and without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody. I'll keep you informed, and if I am able to speak to Donald, I'll let you know that as well. But so far, it appears he's doing well, number one. Number two, that there's thoroughly investigating what happened to anyone else in the audience. We have some reports, but not final reports. And every agency in the federal government, I'm going back to my phone to speak with the federal agencies that are being put together again to give me an updated briefing. Has anything happened? They learned any more in the last couple hours. So thank you very much, and I hope I get to speak to them tonight, and I'll get back to you if I do, okay?
Did not take questions. Stand by. Hold on, just getting more information now. New details. Let's see. I don't know who this is. Hold on a second. I just want to make sure before I read this to you, I know who's providing this. Senior investigative producer for CBS News. Okay. New details from Pat Milton. As I said, the title. Shooter was outside the cordoned off area of the rally. That would make sense with my eyewitness who is there, Larry, was outside the cordoned off area of the rally, a couple of 100 yards away from Trump. The shooter was standing on an elevated structure, was shot and killed by a member of the U.S. Secret Service counter-assault team. The shooter weapon was a rifle. The shooter weapon was a rifle. I mean, he very easily could be dead right now. He could have been killed literally within inches. Eric, Trump almost had his head blown off tonight.
When you watch that video, he's talking straight straight ahead, just 12 o'clock. He's talking 12 o'clock. He turns to the right, his right, and he starts talking to that portion of the crowd. That's where the bullet came from. It appears it came from that direction. Either way, if he's still talking straight, he's dead, because the bullet would have hit the back of his head. But the fact that he turned, which looks like in the direction it came from, or if it came from behind, he turned, eliminating the back of his head for the shooter. It was a matter of maybe 20 seconds. So the shooter...
Let's watch it. We actually just got new video in of the moment that he took the shot. It's a little bit closer up, is my understanding. I haven't seen it either. Let's watch.
Took over. And look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
There he is from afar with the fist up. Let's just play the original one again, because it's just the most remarkable minute of tape I may have ever seen, as you see the former president of the United States get shot and then stand back up, tell the Secret Service trying to escort him out to wait so he can look at the crowd, raise his fist in the air, say the word fight. That's what I see and hear. And then they break out into the USA chant. Watch it.
You see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Move to spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here, move it to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Shooters down. Shooters down.
Are we good?
Shooters down.
Shooters down. Are we good to move?
Shooters down. We're good to move.
We're clear.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, one shoe down, stand, get the shoe.
Watch out.
Wait.
Never seen something so extraordinary. The president fist pumping over and over, telling them, wait, so he could fist pump to the audience, show them that he was okay, remind them to fight. And I have to say, the kudos to the audience members who showed incredible courage, standing there, breaking out into a patriotic cheer. I think I would have been running for my life, Eric. I can't believe the temerity shown by those people.
It was shocking. It was shocking. And the, you mentioned the strength of the guy, the toughness of the guy, a New York billionaire with, gold on his walls. He gets an assassination attempt. He's bleeding, doesn't know how badly he's hurt. Within seconds, he's up telling the Secret Service, wait, I want to fist pump and say, fight. There's a lot of fight in that dog. There is a lot of fighting. Trump showed more character and strength in the moment when he's being attempted to be assassinated than the strength that Joe Biden exudes every time he steps on a stage. Just juxtapose those two stages. Trump getting up from an assassination attempt and the strength and the composure he had then versus Joe Biden trying to figure out where he is. Those are two images that should decide the election alone.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the man's 78 years old. He's 78 years old. And he's worried about where he wants his shoes. Like, it's just remarkable. I don't even know if Trump knew he'd been hit in the head. I mean, he was shot in the head. Grazed, yes, but Trump took a bullet today. And I'm sure he's just coming to terms with that right now. I mean, even Donald Trump hasn't had that happen to him in his past. And I know part of me wants to see him do something extraordinary, like show up at the UFC event tonight. That's totally unconfirmed. But part of me doesn't, because I want him to take care of himself. Just like got his cage rattled today, and who knows what else may have gone. He needs to be examined thoroughly. The Secret Service, of course, again, is telling us that he's okay, that he's fine, and that he is being examined, fully examined, as you would imagine. I do want to say that we've received, now again, this is Catherine Herod. She's receiving unconfirmed reporting from a local contact that the shooter was on a rooftop and downed by a sniper. This dovetails well with earlier reporting that we had received. And there is this video. Again, I'm going to show you this video, but this is unconfirmed. There it is. This would match the location that we're hearing, which would be a couple 100 yards outside the cordoned area. There appears to be a body, looks to me like dressed in gray, down and not moving. This does not look like a sniper on his belly with a rifle, trained on anyone. It looks like somebody who's been taken out, though my experience in these events tells me be careful, because in the hours and days to come, this information may change dramatically. But go ahead.
Can we circle back to something you said that I think it's going to be a big theme, and I'm not sure that you even realize you stumbled on it. The courage and the resolve that those Trump fans displayed as shots are being fired in their direction shows the resolve of the people who are supporting Trump. and the resolve to make America great again. That you stumble on that, and it really is shocking that those people didn't run from gunshots. They stayed, they maintained their position to be assured that Trump is okay. Wow, that is an incredible observation.
I mean, think of what they've gone through too. You know, from basket of deplorables to after January 6th, if you were even a Trump supporter, they were threatening to not publish your book, not hire you. You were treated like scum. He was, of course, demonized universally. There's no question he behaved badly, but they really did try to take everything from him, everything, right down to his freedom, and never stopped trying. To this moment, they're trying. I mean, one does wonder, what does this do to the lawfare campaign? Do they get the message, Eric? Do they take the pedal off the gas a little and understand this is a human being who's in public service? Does Jack Smith, the rabid dog, take a seat and say, maybe we went too far? Maybe there's only so much one human being should have to take. I wouldn't bet on it.
And not only that, it makes it look so small in comparison now. Trump just survived an assassination attempt. This Jack Smith stuff and Bonnie Willis stuff, if they continue that path, Megyn, they're just going to make him even more popular. Even more popular. The guy's been shot at, and now he's being unfairly dragged through the court system. It's over. It's over. So
I just can't say. I mean, like, that's what's resonating with me is that as Joe Biden, I'm not blaming Joe Biden to be clear, but as Joe Biden increased the rhetoric against Trump, saying, let's put a bullseye on him. Why did he do that? Why did he get so pointed? This week, he said, that judge said he raped that woman. Speaking of E. Jean Carroll. And you know what? You can go back and read the opinion, but a partisan judge, yes, after the jury did not convict Trump on rape, they did not find that he raped her.
Right.
The judge, providing an assist for the prosecutor who failed to prove rape, said they must have been talking about rape in an extraordinary written opinion that was completely inappropriate. And now, of course, Joe Biden seized it because he's desperate. Because he's desperate based on his own debate performance and upped the rhetoric. He's a rapist. Put a bullseye on him. And the New York Times, the same thing, Eric. Do you see them this week with the all black print with just a white coming up? Hold on a second. We did a story on this yesterday where it says, okay, he is dangerous in word, deed, and action. He puts self over country. He loathes the laws we live by. How dare they? Here it is. He's dangerous.
Yeah.
He's dangerous. You are dangerous. Do you know the reach you have? Is there any cognition of the need to be somewhat responsible in your rhetoric when all the left controls all the media and they all talk like this about him? All of them.
Yeah, I'll do it again. I'll tell you, you do flip the script and have the right Fox News, whomever, and use Biden as the subject of that text, and they go crazy. You guys are violent. You're extremists. Terrible. But for me, that New York Times piece that you just scrolled through was a kind of a makeup to the left because they were both the editorial board. Biden stepped down now to win, so they had to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, my general feeling on these matters is crazy people shoot other people. And we've had very heated campaigns in the past, very nasty and heated. 2016 was just as heated and nasty as this one. And it didn't drive anybody to try to shoot anyone. You know, madmen are going to do what madmen do, irrespective of what, Joe Biden irresponsibly says or the New York Times irresponsibly prints. And it didn't look much different than what they've said about him millions of times before. And it is millions, maybe not just the Times, but certainly the media. But there has to be some responsibility when it comes to a person's safety and just environment around them when it is the entire media, save for conservative voices, that's ginning up this messaging that he actually is a threat to the country. That's just, it's gross. It's wrong. We talked about approval ratings, right? And what will happen to Trump. I mean, Trump, we talked about this on the show this week, and I realize this sounds crass, but we are in one of the biggest political weeks of this entire election. You know, Trump's about to accept the nomination as the Republican nominee on Thursday. So one has to wonder what this does to the week we're about to have in Milwaukee. Trump's problem in this race has been he can't get his approval rating up very high. He's never come close to really hitting 50. And that's unusual for someone who's going to win. Neither can Biden. You know, Biden's is low too. But just historically, Ronald Reagan, who was also shot as president, came into office on a fairly high note. He had an initial job approval rating as high as 60% in mid-March 1981. He was, of course, sworn in January of 81. On March 30th, he was shot on the streets of Washington, D.C., in front of the Hilton by John Hinckley Jr. And the resulting concern and sympathy helped lift his ratings to 68% by May. By the 100th day of his administration, 51% of Democrats supported him, 70% of independents, 92% of Republicans. I believe, do we have the Reagan moment queued up, guys? Okay, well, we'll get that. I mean, you and I both remember we were kids at the time. You know, it was 1981. I was 10, and I remember exactly where I was when I heard that the sitting president of the United States had been shot. Trump, of course, not the sitting president, but likely to be. And so I do think realistically one can expect, forgive me, again, it feels crass, but it's relevant, somewhat of a poll bump for Donald Trump.
It's going to soar. I mean, but the head-to-head matchups don't matter. It's the swing state matchups, and Trump is already winning by wide margins. And then, some of them, at least seven of the big 8 or 9 swing states, he has it locked down. He'll just increase the lead. And I think you hit on something important also, in that if the lawfare, the prosecutors around the country want to, Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, Bonnie Willett, Jack Smith, they want to keep going after him, they're just going to make it even easier for him. For me, at this point, can he win? Can he win Wisconsin again? Can he win Michigan again? Can he win even Minnesota? If he wins those, it'll be historic. It'll be another historic win. Maybe, like I said, not since Ronald Reagan's defeat over Mondale, that type of wide margin.
You know what, Eric? And because it's not just the fact that they tried to assassinate him. In the same way that the lawfare drove many of us to say we're voting for Trump no matter what, because we have to remind people of what this country is. The initial bullet that Trump was hit by tonight would have been enough to drive many people to his side to say, no, hell no. This kind of thing will only drive to the opposite result of the one you're seeking. But it was the moments after that even cynical news people like you and I think would have to conclude will draw some people to say, I am with Trump. I have never seen that kind of strength, emotional and physical, under the most trying of circumstances. And he had it in the moment. It wasn't 3 hours later. It wasn't when he emerged from the ER. It was as he was bleeding with the blood across his face and his ear half blown off, that he stood up there, pumped the fist, and said, no, I will message my audience on what I want them to do. And it's fight.
And Megyn, they're pulling me out of this office that I borrowed. One final thought. The person who lost their life, the rallygoer who died, just being there, feel for their family. But can you imagine the powerful moment if the family survivors of that person who died comes to the stage at the RNC convention next week? Can you imagine the moment? And if you're undecided, it's over. Then it's over once you see something like that.
Right. I mean, just to stand up for what their loved one wanted, right? I mean, the person who was killed was just there to express their support of their preferred candidate. And Trump is the preferred candidate, according to the polls right now, of the majority of the American people. He's not some outlier. He's not some freak. He's not some authoritarian. He's not Hitler Part 2. He's just a man. And by the way, his politics are rather moderate for all the jerks out there who just believe what they read on MSNBC.com. He's moderate. This is one of the beefs that dyed-in-the-wool conservatives have with the man. They want him to be more neocon-y. They want him to be more pro-lifey.
You know what
Go ahead.
I pray right now? I pray the left, they're going to do it. I hope they give it a beat before they start the gun control argument with the shooter using a rifle. It's probably already happened. You and I have been talking for a few minutes here. Some stupid left-wing pundit is going to blame guns, and it's insane.
You're right. It happens every time. I do want to read this statement, then I'll let you go, Eric. President Trump just released it. I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed, and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It's incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter, who is now dead. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong, and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. In all caps, God bless America. You know, it reminds me, Eric, a little bit of George W. Bush after 9/11. I mean, of all things, his ear was ripped off. Part of his ear was ripped off. And it reminds me of the George W. Bush, well, I can hear you. And soon the people who knock down these buildings will hear all of us. It's that kind of a moment right now. You may have almost shot off the man's ear. You may have almost shot off his head. But the world is going to hear all of us on November 5th, that this is not who we are. This is not how we resolve political disputes in the United States of America. We are not actually a banana republic, despite the left trying to take us there in unprecedented ways over this past year. I think true patriots, and I mean patriots, you can separate it apart from whether you're a core Trump supporter, true patriots and lovers of this country and this experiment understand now that the stakes have changed in this election. It's not about petty concerns that can be resolved 4 years from now. It's about who we are and what we'll tolerate as Americans. The stakes have changed entirely. I'll give you the last word, my friend.
The last word is you're 100% right. They've changed. But I'll tell you, if they thought something like this, if the left not suggesting they were hoping something like this would happen, but if they wondered the reaction, would Trump cower and cocoon and say, wow, this is life or death? He's the opposite. That just energized, they filled his tank through November 5th and probably through the 2028 election. And in fact, until we get there, Megyn, really, really good being out with you. Appreciate your time.
Oh, all the best, Eric. So appreciate you coming on in a time like this. Very grateful to you. Let's talk soon. I want to play for the audience before we bring on our next guest a couple of pieces of tape that we've just gotten in. One is an eyewitness to the shooting. You're watching it as I am for the first time. Let's watch.
Tell me what you saw.
Okay, I was in the first row right in front of President Trump. I heard first, boom, boom. I heard 4 boom, boom, booms. Immediately thought fireworks. Somebody's still putting off fireworks. Yeah. Then the Secret Service jumped onto him, pushed him to the ground.
What did he look like when you saw him, when he got up?
So I'm just telling you now, I pushed him to the ground. That's what we saw. And not one of us in the front row either hid down or anything. We all stood up strong to make sure. We wanted to protect him too. We wouldn't move till Trump got up.
What did you see from him?
So then the guys with the guns came, they clear right, clear left. Or they said, lift him. So they lifted him straight up. And Trump said, I got to get my shoes on. So he looked okay to me, but I saw a little bit of blood right here.
On the side of his face?
The right cheek. It was like a teardrop almost. But then when he turned to the right, I could see the blood from the top of the ear to the bottom. Was not gushing.
Just a
but
bit.
it was all the way down.
You're doing okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You weren't hurt?
No, I thought something happened. But in my mind, I thought When they pushed him, he hit himself on something. You know, almost like a burn, like brush burn or whatever, you know, something. And then he put his hand up real big, like strong, and they walked him down.
It's really incredible to see. This is a woman. She appears to be, forgive me, madam, in her 50s or 60s. Tough as nails. Tough as nails. And it's because of what I just said before. The Trump supporters are used to having everything thrown at them. They're tough. They have to be tough. They have no choice. You show up at a Trump rally, you understand you're going to take some incoming. But this is, of course, something no American should ever have to be subjected to when just attending a political rally. But still, look at that woman in the face of gunfire all around her, able to give an interview, able to say she's okay, able to describe it in great detail, which matches up with the video that we saw as well. Joining me now, Bill Stanton, former NYPD, and Buck Sexton, former CIA. Guys, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Let's talk about the security, because I think a lot of people are wondering, how did a loaded rifle get anywhere near former President Donald Trump at an event like this? Buck, I'll start with you on it, because it's both of your lines of work, but how on earth could this happen?
Look, I've been, like so many others, just fielding calls, texts ever since this happened, with the latest information and people trying to analyze how such a thing could go down just tactically. And already, I think the sense is that the Secret Service was slow, certainly, and perhaps missed one of the most obvious overlook points for there to be this kind of a shooting. Now, I wasn't at the rally, obviously, and I have to base this off of what's being shared, not just in terms of the videos alone, which are obviously very instructive because there's so many videos from different angles as to what went on here, but also it seems that the shooter on the rooftop was able to get up there. His rifle was visible to people nearby. There have been eyewitnesses talking about how they even tried to flag this to Secret Service. They were able to, once this guy opened fire, hit him with counter sniper fire. So that response was rapid. But how they could have missed, based on the schematic, if you will, of what this area looks like, where the buildings are, the blueprints, how they could have allowed anyone to get up on that building with a rifle, to me, it's clearly a massive error. I mean, when a president almost loses his life, or a presidential candidate and former president in this case, this was an inch or two from national catastrophe. So there was a clear failure here from the security protocols, and we're going to have to figure out how to make sure President Trump is safe going through this election, and hopefully beyond that one.
Floor and had a perfect view of JFK in this open car. It's not like we don't have a history to look back at to say elevated platforms are dangerous when the president of the United States or the former president of the United States is there. And Trump is an even bigger target in some ways than the sitting president. He's just an extremely controversial figure. Sure. And it's like, I don't understand. I mean, I gave kudos to the law enforcement at the top of the show because the shooter's dead. So that's a plus. But I don't understand how my friend Larry's wife couldn't bring her long umbrella in, but this shooter was allowed to get, as it appears now, on a rooftop nearby within a couple hundred yards of the former president and shoot him.
Secret Service should have had positive control of that rooftop. I don't want to step on my colleague's time here from the NYPD, but I just wanted to say that there's no, and not only should they have been able to get return fire quickly, which they did, they should have had positive control of that space. I mean, there's absolutely no way that anyone should have been able to get on that rooftop. If you were trying to plan an assassination, just an everyday person trying to figure out how would I get the clearest shot of the president on the podium, the building where the shot was taken from seems to be the most obvious one.
This just in, Bill, before I bring you in, this is from an eyewitness who, well, take a listen to what he saw.
Someone who was here, you weren't inside the event, nope, but you were just outside. Tell us what you saw.
So we had a party here all day. You can see behind us at the Brinkles Farming Greenhouse here. We had a party, and we all decided, hey, you know, when we hear Trump up there, we're going to walk up through the field, stand by the trees out there under the shade, and watch and listen to the rally. Right? We couldn't see him, but we could hear him. So we walked up, and probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here. I have no idea, you know, but we noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, and, you know, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle. We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police were like, huh, what? You know, like they didn't know what was going on. You know, we're like, hey, right here on the roof. We can see him from right here. We see him. You know, he's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him off the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for, 2 or 3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
Oh my God. Bill Stanton, former NYPD, that is absolutely chilling. Your reaction?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here, Megyn, and I texted you some of my initial feelings. So first, let me say these law enforcement, all of them are willing to put their life on the line to protect the former president. That being said, watching that and having trained with some of the best in the world, ex-SWAT, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, and strategic response, and with the Secret Service, what I saw there was not their best day. What do I mean? When they heard the shots, they kept him up there on the podium, in my opinion, for way too long. Just shoot center mass at that podium. We knew the president was back there. I saw a little bit confusion, and I believe that comes from lack of proper planning. I would be interested to see in the post, shooting review. Did they do a proper advance? Were the advance teams there? When were they there? Did they walk the perimeter? Were there undercovers within the crowd? Was there proper communication and coordination between the different departments? I could see there was some local, there was some strategic response team, there was counter snipers, and were there coordination amongst them? They kept him up on that podium way too long. And while it made for a good optic, I want my shoes, they shouldn't have listened to him. They should have got him right out there. When Reagan got shot, if you can go back to that tape, they didn't hesitate. They threw him. I even think they cracked his ribs because they were so forceful, getting him into the Beast, the armored limo. So
they handled him like a rag doll when Reagan was shot. They immediately shut down any of his own movements and got him into that car.
That's exactly right. They kept the former president up there way too long. And the pictures that we're seeing, the close-ups, the photographs, that could just as easily have been the scope of a rifle. So, we don't work in the movie world. We work in the real world. There's always room for improvement. And this has to be looked at. This will be studied. And hopefully the mistakes will be rectified going in. I'm also curious to see what type of budget they had. What type of budget does a former president have for the Secret Service? What is his detail, especially running for president? Do they have enough bodies? Do they have enough resource to do the proper advance work and coordination that's needed, as we've seen never more so than tonight?
Hold on. I'm trying to find that update. My team has sent me a lot. Maybe they can send me, but there is a question about whether more funding for Trump's security was rejected
Megyn, can I
by
just
the Biden
point out
administration.
that your friend and mine, the Dan Bongino, who obviously has real expertise on the Secret Service side of things, having served himself, tweeted out that he believes the head of the Secret Service should resign because she was warned about the increased threat and the need for additional resources. On my own radio show, Clay and Buck, Clay said just a few days ago on the air, I'm really worried about Trump. I would personally pay to triple his Secret Service detail. The threats against him must be through the roof. So this was, you start to pull this all together, and this isn't like some random congressman somewhere that was attacked by a maniac. Trump is the single highest profile. I think you could argue even more so than the sitting president because of the political temperature and what's going on in the country right now. Single highest profile target that there is, and the most threats against him right now. And so, I mean, while I can understand that, there's this idea, well, Secret Service did their best and they dove and they tried to, manage the situation. They really have one job, and it's to prevent this from happening. And they didn't prevent it. The counterfire was late. I mean, it stopped this from getting worse. This was inches away from a national catastrophe where we would have woken up tomorrow in a different country, in a different political reality, in a place where my own family was calling me. I was talking to my parents as soon as this happened. I mean, I was in the worst situation. I was getting texts and everything. I'm in the gym. It's loud. My parents called me. They said, "Do you see this?" And we're talking. And I said, "Oh my God, have they assassinated President Trump?" And they asked me, "What do you think happens?" I think I have ideas for almost everything, Megyn. But if that had happened, we would not know what the country would look like, what the future would be like tomorrow, in a way that is terrifying. Honestly, I mean, I think that if you're looking to see how the country could be pulled apart at the seams, it would be a presidential candidate who's ahead by massive numbers, being assassinated. And of course, it's not also in the vacuum of just one I know they're going to say it's one crazy person, but we know that Trump he's been impeached twice. He's been indicted 4 times. They have thrown more against this president and had more aggressive propaganda and just insane things, calling him Hitler-like. I mean, Hitler killed 11 million people in the death camp, 6 million Jews. In what universe is there a Hitlerian comparison that he's made to Donald Trump? They do it all the time. They just had him on the cover of the New Republic a week ago with a Hitler mustache on. These people are insane. And the major news networks, I'm sorry, they're just as bad in terms of the propaganda. They're a part of it. CNN had a thing about the president fell down. Did you see that? I'm sure you've talked about it already.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I grew up with the Trumps. I knew Trump's kids. He's a dad. He's a husband. He's a human being. He's serving the country. There's just no sense of basic humanity when it comes from the other side, not just in the midst of this assassination attempt, but all along they treat him like he's some sort of reptile that has to be exterminated. It is horrific. And so it's in that context that we see this assassination attempt. It's in that context that we say, how many people on the left go on Twitter right now or X? There are people that are making jokes about this. There are people that, say that I don't even want to repeat it on your show, but there are people in this country for whom today wasn't a wake-up call. It was something that they've been perhaps psychologically preparing for and maybe even hoping for a long time. And that is a horrible thing to think and say as an American right now, but it is out there. You can see it for yourself.
You saw this. It's ubiquitous on the left, but they're just having one of these big muckety-muck conferences out there in Sun Valley. It happens every year. And the one thing all the billionaires go. And the one thing about this conference is they don't leak. What's said, behind closed doors by all the wealthy and connected people doesn't get leaked because that's their private club. Except now this is leaked. Peter Thiel was up there, entrepreneur and venture capitalist and somebody who employed J.D. Vance after J.D. Vance finished Yale Law School, coincidentally. He sarcastically thanked bundler, billionaire, Democratic heavyweight Reid Hoffman for funding lawsuits against Trump, saying they'd turn Trump into a martyr. Peter's, more right-leaning in his politics, said, sarcastically thanking him, thanks, because you've turned him into a martyr, increasing his chances of re-election. And from the stage, this is Dylan Byers reporting of Punchbowl News, reporting that Reid Hoffman responded with his own sarcastic quip, quote, "Yeah, I wish I had made him an actual martyr." And by the way, my friend was there and confirmed that this exact thing happened. So, I mean, she was horrified. This is horrifying. This is not how you talk about another. Yeah, he was telling the truth. And that's why I was talking earlier, Buck, about, I tuned into CNN earlier, and Wolf Blitzer, he was far more sympathetic when we had the first Desert Storm war. I remember watching his reporting there over what was happening in another country than he was about what just happened in our country, as at least one innocent American lay dead, another's now in serious condition, and the former president of the United States, and likely next, almost got his head blown off. They can't muster it. They genuinely see him as an evil man. Yes. And it is one of those, however much you hate the media, it's not enough. And by the way,
this is
other
a
friends
good
now,
evil moment.
Other friends by the minute are just for filing in saying they all heard Reid Hoffman say this, that it was a shocking moment. Go ahead, Bill.
What I see happening with my high dollar clients, and I'm also from the streets, you have the elites that live in a bubble, and they live in their ivory towers. They fly in private jets, and they're so far removed from the daily strife that everyday Americans endure. Now, you also have today's youth that no longer live in the world of reality. They live in the cyber world where they have big cojones. They feel they could say what they want. There's no repercussions. In my youth, you mouth off to someone, there was always the threat that you may get smacked in the mouth and you have to knuckle up. And I think what's happening now in today's world with the active shooters, with Antifa, they put on their COVID masks and they engage in violence. They cannot differentiate between the cyber world and the real one, where they're so used to screaming out loud, I need to be heard, I need to take action online. This is now transcending into the real world, and it's become blurred. And this really needs to be a wake-up call to everyday Americans to secure themselves and to watch out for your neighbors.
A couple of things breaking here. Sean Davis of The Federalist reports as follows. And please, audience, bear with me. As I said, initial reports almost always get revised. Things that are said have to be taken back on the night of breaking news of this sort. So please, everything with a grain of salt, unless you get it directly from the Secret Service. But this is from Sean Davis of The Federalist. A source familiar with Trump's security detail tells The Federalist that the former and future president's detail has been asking for beefed up protection and resources for weeks, but has been rebuffed time and time again by Biden's Department of Homeland Security. DHS, which oversees Secret Service protective detail, quote, was not responsive to those requests for more resources, according to this source. Buck, this is exactly what you were just saying, that the absence of appropriate security was noted, that there was a request that it be beefed up, and if this is true, it was denied, which is going to be a political scandal of its own.
Oh, absolutely. And as it well should be. I think that Biden's best defense is that he didn't know what was going on with this, just like he doesn't know what's going on with anything else. Although that doesn't really make any of us feel much better, I think, considering he's the commander in chief, technically. This will be something that I think there's a paper trail for, email trail. They'll be able to show these requests if, in fact, that reporting is accurate. By the way, Sean Davis, a good friend of mine, brilliant guy. And I know he's going on the breaking news too, but I tend to put stock in. I would do what you did, Megyn. I would trust enough in Sean to put forward him as a source. So I think Sean is generally rock solid. And if this is the case, you have to wonder, in what universe would it be okay decision making for the sitting president, who has his DOJ bringing two cases? I know it's separate, the DOJ, we all know that's preposterous. And then has an agent, a former agent, if you will, of the DOJ, taking a massive demotion to go bring a prosecution against him in New York. I mean, when you see the lawfare campaign that is being waged, and then simultaneously, it seems there was a denial of additional security resources. I don't know how things can get much worse for the Biden administration than they are, but this would actually accomplish that. This would show us that Biden is not only senile and the whole thing has been a lie, but there's a viciousness and a vindictiveness to him that shows you what I've always been saying, by the way, which is that he's never been a man of any character or decency. That was always a front as well. So we'll see. I certainly think that we need to get to the bottom of this, because there can be no excuse for that kind of denial of resources given the threats against Trump. There's no explanation.
What about Pentagon coverage?
What about what?
Will Kennedy be getting coverage now?
Yeah. Well, RFKJ. Here, listen to this. Chad Pergram, Capitol Hill reporter, a producer for Fox News, longtime. Trust Chad Pergram entirely. He reports that James Comer, who's head of oversight in the House, wants U.S. Secret Service Director Cheadle to appear for a hearing on the Trump shooting soon. His committee has oversight of Secret Service. Comer, quote, "My prayers are with President Trump and the victims of the assassination attempt at today's rally in Pennsylvania. I think the brave Secret Service members who put their lives at risk to protect President Trump, and for the American patriots in the audience who helped innocent victims. Political violence in all forms is un-American and unacceptable. There are many questions and Americans demand answers. I've already contacted the Secret Service for a briefing. I'm also calling on Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle to appear for a hearing. The Oversight Committee will send a formal invitation soon. Of course, there will be a full-fledged investigation into how, if that man we heard with the red hair, the eyewitness, is correct, regular Americans saw the shooter climb up on the rooftop in front of their very eyes with a rifle, which according to some reports is being described as an AR-15 rifle. They saw that with their eyes, tried to did call attention to law enforcement that was on scene, that they had seen it. And according to at least that one eyewitness, the local law enforcement seemed befuddled as to what to do. That's my word, not his. And now we see what appears to be the shooter dead on top of the rooftop. It certainly seems to confirm that set of circumstances. Bill, I want to show you this. It's a remarkable photo, and it was captured by former White House press corps member Doug Mills. If you zoom in, which we have here, over the president's left shoulder, keep in mind he got hit in the right ear, and you will see what appears to be on a super close-up. It looks like it could be a bullet flying in the air. This is saying to the right of the president's head. You know how sometimes when you put the picture up, it flips? This to me looks, on screen, it's to the right, but the president's right ear would be on the other side. In any event, there will be a full investigation here, as we saw with JFK Jr., on exactly where that gunfire came from, Bill, and whether there was just one shooter.
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to do a whole deep dive on the deceased, the assailant's social media. They're going to look at his correspondence, his phone, his texts, and they're going to find out who he was affiliated. Hopefully, they'll do half the job that they did with the January 6th investigation. What I will say, speaking to law enforcement, complacency in law enforcement is not your friend. It's 99% mundane, 1% adrenaline, like we've seen here. These cops, where they're from, it's probably not a high crime area. They're used to directing traffic, doing their daily duties. It's not often a president comes into town. So when they're hit with a stimulus, like, hey, there's a shooter up there, they weren't necessarily trained on how to react like that. I'm not making an excuse. I'm giving you an explanation. And the president, I'm telling you, that man has true grit. I would have been a pancake on that floor. I wouldn't have gone up. I would just say, carry me out of here.
That's not true. I would have, but not you.
This is something that needs to be learned, and there needs to be action. All this petty BS, what the left has been doing, cutting funding, looking to persecute them. I feel like I'm watching Braveheart, just yell mercy, and this man keeps on going. This will rally his voter base. This will rally the independents. And where is the violence coming from? The left. And it's going to be interesting to see how they spin this.
What can't happen is that Trump now has to go underground for the next 4 months because of this security environment. But for sure, they're going to start to have to take his security much more seriously. I said this last September when I went to interview him in person in New Jersey. There was far too little security around him. Granted, everyone knew I was not a threat. Things hadn't ramped up the way they have right now, where we're 4 months out and counting. But I can personally attest to the fact that it was very clear he did not have enough protection, even to my layperson's eyes. And I'm horrified to learn that's ongoing. We do have the Reagan clip queued up, because I do think that that's probably the most similar historical situation to what we just saw today. Though, thank God, it appears that President Trump was not hit nearly as bad as Reagan was. But to your point earlier, Bill, the Secret Service did not let Reagan stand there for a minute and do anything. They grabbed him, as I said, like a rag doll and got him into the presidential limousine. Let's watch it.
Doesn't make much sense, Henry. He puts you here and then he runs around with a few turns. President Reagan! Back up! Get him out! Get him out! Get him out! Get him out!
And they did. This, by the way, from Michael Reagan, son of the late president. The Reagan family sends their prayers to President Trump and his family, special prayers for Melania as we remember what Nancy was going through in March 1981. We also have this in from Ivanka Trump. Thank you for your love and prayers for my father and for the other victims of today's senseless violence in Butler, Pennsylvania. I am grateful to the Secret Service and all the other law enforcement officers for their quick and decisive actions today. I continue to pray for our country. I love you, Dad, today and always. And so with that, you know, it is worth remembering, Buck, that though it certainly we need to investigate where was the funding, where was the adequate security, and where was the Secret Service as this man took to the top of that roof. It can't be forgotten that they do risk their lives every day to protect people like Trump, people like Biden. Too many of them do not go home at the end of their shifts, both law enforcement and Secret Service. And, you know, there's been a long history of them losing their lives in these circumstances. It happens. It doesn't look like it was well handled, but you got to say a prayer for them too, because their lives were also on the line.
Right. I mean, well, look, always, and you know, I spent 18 months in the NYPD Intelligence Division on loan from the CIA, and so I was around a lot of law enforcement personnel working beside them for counterterrorism purposes, and so I'm very familiar with the risks that they take and the stories and what it's like for them and their families. No one, I think, is questioning the bravery, the patriotism, or the professionalism of any particular agent, Secret Service agent, or group of agents. That said, they have one job, and it is to prevent what basically just happened. What saved President Trump's life was not the Secret Service. It was the really divine intervention, I don't know what else you could call it, of a round fired at him from a rifle from an elevated position that missed him by perhaps 2 inches. It would have been different. It would have been fatal. And he was able to get those clearly aimed shots off from that elevated position. And you have to wonder how this kind of a thing could ever be possible. The clip you showed of Reagan, I mean, we learned this in the CIA, they learned this in the FBI, all the different federal agencies. You're actually most vulnerable usually when you're moving. You know, when it comes to static security, they can usually do a better job. One of the reasons why they have motorcades and they're you know, as large and well armed as they are, is that when you're immobile is when things can be more problematic, because people are, you know, there's just more unknown introduced in the situation. As you see in the Reagan clip there, he's coming out on the street. There's a change of venue. There's people going with him. When you're preparing for a presidential speech, I mean, President Trump was almost killed on live TV giving a speech. I mean, this is the absolute core of what the Secret Service needs to be able to do, is to make situations like that safe. And this guy got up on a rooftop and got off aimed shots and hit the president in the head with a rifle round. I mean, I don't. This is a failure, and I'm sorry. You know, I remember people were upset at me initially when the Uvalde massacre happened, because I said there is no universe in which those officers. I know it's a different situation, but just a very different situation, but there's no universe in which those officers could explain waiting in the hallway as long as they did. I don't care what's going on inside. It's not possible. Yeah. It's against tactical doctrine. There is no world in which this is not a massive Secret Service failure. Now, that's not on any one individual, but that is the truth, and we need to understand that. And there needs to be, I mean, we'll get into these hearings and the so what of who signed what and all of that in the days ahead. But Secret Service got lucky. Secret Service got lucky. And that's not where they should be. It should never be. If they had taken the shooter out before he could get a shot off on the roof, I'd say, all right, the procedures worked. He got shots off, Megyn. We could have lost President Trump tonight. We were literal inches.
And we did lose one American, and
we did lose
the
another
fighting for their life right now.
Patriot. Yeah.
For me, he was up on that podium for an eternity. And if you look at, the textbook doing it right, well, first of all, if someone's committed to losing their life, it's very hard to stop someone, whether it's a vest, whether it's a handgun or a kitchen knife. If someone could have touch access, they could do the damage. And what we saw from the Reagan shooting, the brief clip that you showed, their backs were to the principal. They had designated people to get him in the car, and they got him out. I saw, once he was in the car way too long. I saw a couple of agents, waving their gun in the air. Better training, bigger budget, more personnel.
We shouldn't have to keep learning these same lessons. Elon Musk tweeted out not long ago, moments, dangerous times ahead. 2 people, separate occasions, have already tried to kill me in the past 8 months. They were arrested with guns about 20-minute drive from Tesla HQ in Texas. Can't keep doing this to each other. You can have political disagreements where you say, I don't like his policy. I don't like the new X. I don't like SpaceX or Twitter or what. You can say all of that. We have to stop demonizing these men in particular with the worst, scariest, darkest, most evil rhetoric we have. It's, again, I don't know anything about the shooter right now. I've seen the same reports online that you guys have seen. We just need to be more responsible in general. Oh gosh. Okay.
Megyn, I really believe honestly this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say that this is not, and I know they're going to do this all week. This is not a, we need to stop political violence on both sides moment. I'm not saying you're saying that, but I know that's what will be said. That will be the
no one calls Joe Biden Hitler. Nobody says that about him. No, nobody has.
My point.
He is dangerous in word, deed, and action. He puts self over country. He loathes the laws we live by. And that's not even getting into the body of what the New York Times said about him this week. Sorry, keep going.
That's exactly the point. And this is not a both sidesism thing. This is not a moment where we should all sit down and think about political violence in general terms or anything else. The left in this country is insane, and the left has a home in the vanguard of the Democrat Party, and some people say increasingly call all the major shots. Here's an example that you won't hear talked about on CNN. There have really been 2 active shooter assassination attempts against politicians in America in recent memory. Obviously, what just happened to President Trump. And then there was the shooting at the baseball field in Alexandria back in, 2018? Where a Bernie Sanders voting, I'm bringing that up because he said this is for health care. That was what he said as he was shooting. Tried to kill conservative members of Congress. Shot Steve Scalise, tried to murder Senator Rand Paul and a whole bunch of other Republicans. He was a leftist. A leftist lunatic showed up with a gun and a knife and said that he wanted to kill Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. This is coming from one side, the left. They're little partisan hacks at all these different news networks, at the New York Times. They pretend they're above it, but they're not. When you use ad Hitlerum, when you talk about people as an extinction level event for democracy or the end of the republic, you are encouraging violence. You are encouraging someone out there to take into their own hands, changing the destiny of this country by taking the right to a free and fair election, in this case, voting for Donald Trump, out of the hands of the American people. They have been pushing this. And we don't say the same thing. Megyn, if I was on your show and I said Joe Biden's going to lock up everyone's family, send them to camps and murder everybody, you would be like, Buck, what's wrong with you? Get off my show. It would just never happen. They say lunatic stuff about Trump all the time. They say that Trump
Can I tell you
is
something?
effective.
Let me tell you something. By the way, Rand Paul, too, was attacked. And it was, Rand Paul was
Almost
seriously
beaten to
injured
death
by some
his
lunatic.
Democrat neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah, and people thought it was hilarious. They loved it. Can I just give you one example? I don't mean to bash on just the BBC because it's certainly not them. But my friends over in Great Britain, like Dan Wooten, and he was on the air and he had a commentator on, Lawrence Fox. And Lawrence made some crass joke about this woman who was playing down men's mental health. And he said basically he didn't want to sleep with her in a British way. And what man would want to shag her? That's what he said. And Dan said, oh, you know, she's an attractive woman, Lawrence, and, you know, whatever. It was an awkward moment and they ended it and it was fine. Both those guys got fired. They both got fired, okay, for saying that kind of thing on the air in the UK where they have very strict regulators. I was on the BBC Friday night, right? We're Saturday night right now. And I didn't know I was participating in a panel, but suddenly they brought up the actor Alan Cummings, who played Mr. Elton in the movie Emma with Gwyneth Paltrow years ago, if memory serves. Fine actor, less of a great political commentator. He was on to talk about the fact that he had just been at a Biden fundraiser and Biden was more like the debate Biden and less like, you know, the Biden of 10 years ago. And Alan Cummings decided to jump into my Trump analysis to say, what's wrong with those moderators at that debate? Why didn't they point out that Trump's just been accused of child rape? He says this on the air at the BBC. And I said, that is absolutely untrue. That is beneath a channel like this to even allow such an allegation to be aired. And there's absolutely not a scintilla of truth to what you just said. That guy isn't banned from the BBC. No one's been fired. You didn't even hear about this story, did you? Didn't even make a wave. No problem. You can go out there and proclaim that Donald Trump is now a child molester, which is defamation per se, meaning damages will be assumed. You don't have to prove it. Someone says you're a child molester, they're presumed. No problem. You say about one leftist woman that nobody wants to sleep with her after she says men's mental health doesn't really deserve much attention, and you're fired, your ass is fired. I realize it's granular. I'm just saying, to your point, Buck, there's such a disgusting double standard, and it has to stop. It has to stop. This just in,
and
the Trump motorcade just left Butler Memorial Hospital en route to Pittsburgh. Do not know exactly where he goes from there, but thank God the Trump motorcade just left the hospital. We presume that means Trump is in the motorcade. And if so, that's great news. Certainly would love to hear that he's been given a clean bill of health and has been released from the hospital. One more soundbite for you, and before I say goodbye. In this new soundbite we have, guys, I'm just going to describe it. Apparently, we're going to see a Secret Service member on a rooftop appearing to shoot at the sniper who killed the Trump supporter and shot at President Trump. Let's watch.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Okay, so what we're seeing is hard to see in the tiny little box that we're all looking at, but it appears to, we'll play it again and we can talk over it. We don't need the sound. But you're seeing a white rooftop. And I guess if we zoom in there, you can see a Secret Service member. And this would explain.
That's a counter sniper team.
Okay, this would explain perfectly,
there to
Buck.
prevent. Yeah,
right.
They're
this
there
is the person who should have seen the man in the first place before the trigger was pulled.
Well, I'm curious what our colleague thinks about this as well. They had that roof secured, positive control, sniper team. The other roof they leave open to anyone to just crawl up on. I mean,
at minimum, have a local PD guy posted at the base of that building. At minimum,
at minimum. I don't want to sound crazy. There are people that are now starting to float all kinds of conspiracies about, I'm not doing that, but I'm just saying when there's this level of lapse, people start to wonder what the heck is going on. And I'd agree. I mean, it's funny. I had 3 friends from the NYPD tonight all saying the same thing, which is he was on the stage way too long. So that's absolutely true as well from a procedural standpoint. But leaving open the elevated platform for the shooter to get to in the first place is, that just feels like an unpardonable oversight from a security and preparation for the venue perspective.
It's a sin. This is what has to happen for the game to be raised, for more procedures, for more personnel, for a bigger budget, that this has to happen this way, which
I'll tell you this, Trump rallies are still, people will wait. I mean, they would wait before Megyn, as you know, for 24 hours. I mean, they would camp out, they do whatever to go see Trump. Trump's rallies are now going to be on lockdown, but I think you'll see still huge numbers of people because more than ever,
yes.
I mean, they will want
There'll be lines around the block to get in. There'll be lines around the block to get in, and there'll be lines around the block to get in on election day too. We pulled the cover you referenced, Buck, the New Republic, in June with a morphing of Trump and Hitler, and the headline on the cover is "American Fascism: What It Would Look Like." Shame on you. Shame on you. It wasn't just them. The Washington Post, December of 23. Look at this. The two men, their heads merged, the back of Trump's into the back of Hitler's in a very similar pose. Speaking.
I mean, I know you just said it, but this
and listen, wait, let me just read you the caption. Yes, it's okay to compare Trump to Hitler. Don't let me stop you, by Mike Godwin. Shame on you, Mike Godwin. Shame on you all. Go ahead.
No, it's just, this is incitement, Megyn. They've been inciting and inciting and inciting, and now someone took a shot at Trump.
And it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. When you have illegals coming into this country, robbing, gangs, taking over people's homes, when you see prosecutors inventing laws to convict a former president, this is only going to get worse before it gets better.
This just in from Jackie Heinrich of Fox News. Former senior federal law enforcement source tells Fox, quote, Secret Service failed. Shooter was high ground, took way too long to get him out, and he was exposed if there was a second shooter. That was an inch away from his assassination. That, again, sourcing a senior federal law enforcement source, which dovetails with my own former federal law enforcement source here on the right and my former law enforcement source at the cop level on the left. Go ahead, Buck.
I mean, I was saying, unfortunately, CIA and the intelligence world, there's a long history of trying to prevent these kinds of things from happening, and intelligence agencies from unsavory places do these kinds of things. And this was a massive failure. I mean, there's no way around that reality. And as I said, we just got really lucky. So everyone say a prayer tonight, because God was watching out for President Trump. God was watching out for this country.
Absolutely right. You guys, thank you. Thank you both so much for being here. Bill, Buck,
Thanks,
all the best. I want to play you another look at the video that we have been watching. This moment that will live in American history as iconically terrible, iconically inspirational in the way that Trump handled it, iconically disturbing in what we've come to. When an assassin got into a Trump rally, appears to have gotten up on a rooftop that was unprotected, took a shot at the former president of the United States and soon to be nominated Republican candidate for president of the United States, hit him in the head, took the life of a Trump fan and another who is reportedly fighting for his own life at this hour, he or she, don't know the gender, before he was killed by return fire. Watch.
We see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Move to spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here. Move to the spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Shooters down. Shooters down.
Are we good?
Shooters down.
Shooters down. Are we good to move?
Shooters down. We're good to move.
We're clear.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're
Let's
clear.
move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay. Let's shoot down. Get the shield.
Watch out.
Wait.
Fist in the air. Guys, maybe you're feeling it at home too. That brought chills. That brought chills seeing him with the fist and stopping the Secret Service from escorting him out. I realize it against protocol and all that, but like the man stopped the Secret Service from getting him into the beast so that he could show his supporters he was okay, so that he could remind them to fight and he could show his strength. It's natural. It's who he is. It came to him in a way I have to admit. I think I'd be like, yes, get me out of here. It's who he is, and it was inspirational. It was. I want to update some of our earlier reporting. We told you that Charlie Kirk, who's very tight with Trump World, said there's a possibility that Trump could show up at the UFC fight tonight in Denver. Now, the New York Post reporting that will not happen. That a source for the Trump campaign confirmed directly to the New York Post, no. And thank God for that. The man needs to be with his family on a night like this. A senior Trump advisor is telling Phil Wegman of realclearpolitics.com that Trump remains, quote, in a very good mood and that he is resolved to continue with the convention this week, that there are, quote, no plans to deviate on anything that was already planned. Extraordinary news. I want to bring in my friend Jesse Kelly, former Marine, now commentator and host of I'm Right on the First TV. Jesse, your thoughts on what's happened in the United States of America tonight?
Well, first, what a remarkable level of composure from President Trump to stand up. The dude was asking for his shoes. Did you hear him on the microphone? He's like, hold on, I got to get my shoes. He just got shot in the ear. I don't like when my sons flick me in the ear. He got shot in the ear and he got up and he was worried about his shoes. So look, all the credit in the world. That is, that's very, very impressive to him. And the people needed to see that too. Can you imagine how scared the people would be if they didn't know? And for him to keep his thoughts together enough to reassure them, I thought was awesome. But look, Megyn, I've got some dark thoughts, but these are thoughts that you and I have talked about many times on the show. We have a serious problem with communist violence in the country. That is what they believe. The left believes in violence. It's not what they do, it's who they are. All political power comes from the barrel of a gun. Mao Zedong said that a long time ago. You don't have to look far. You go on Facebook or something like that. You'll see just the regular neighborhood Democrat when they get mad at somebody. Hey, someone post his address. It's just natural for these people because in their minds, they're fighting a revolution. And there are two different kinds of communists. I talk about this all the time. There are the elite ones and there are the street ones. You have guys like Chuck Schumer. They'll get up and they'll give speeches and they'll threaten Brett Kavanaugh by name and tell him he's going to reap the whirlwind. And then he just washes his hands of the whole thing. And then there's an assassin who flies from California with a gun outside of Kavanaugh's home, ready to put a bullet in his mouth. This is how it works. And the reason it works this way is because after these street scumbags do these acts of violence, they're protected. They're given legal protection by the dirty elite communists. Do I need to point to the Antifa people who firebombed an NYPD cop car and should have faced 15 years in the clink for terrorism? They're already out on the street, of course, protesting for Palestine or something stupid like that. This happens all over. Democrat politicians, Democrat judges, Democrat DAs, they let these people go free with the understanding, with the anticipation that they're going to do the violent things Democrats want done. We don't have a political violence problem in this country, and everyone who's saying that is dead freaking wrong. We have a communist violence problem in this country. I remember it was Breitbart, I think it was, and I want to make sure I give them credit. They printed an article in Trump's last year of office where they documented that it was over 390 acts of violence against Trump supporters just during Trump's 4 years, including a Trump supporter executed in Oregon by Antifa. This is the norm. It is how they operate. And you have an FBI arresting school board moms, pro-lifers, and January 6th memas who sauntered through the Capitol, and no serious effort has been made, zero, to attack groups like Antifa. And we hear the allegations. We don't know details yet. I don't want to act like we do. But there are these vile, violent street animal networks like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the people who've been firebombing the pro-life centers. And when you ask the Attorney General, what's he say about it? Well, they were wearing masks and it was at night. Nothing we could do about it. But he sure can send a SWAT team to a pastor's house and stick guns in in the face of his wife and his kids. We have a communist violence problem. It is not only encouraged, it is allowed at the highest levels of our government, and there needs to be a government clean out like no tomorrow. This is a government problem.
It's amazing when I hear you talk, because just this week I was listening to some leftist podcast and they were talking about, it's very serious what Trump is threatening to do now, as the way has been cleared by the Supreme Court, when he's talking about draining the swamp and taking control of certain federal agencies and putting in only loyalists. If he's going to take a correct. Exactly. That's what we want him to do. We do not want this regime to stay in control for 1 minute longer than they have to. This is what we can expect. Maybe not gunfire on your average day, but the complete undermining of the man and the attempted ruination of the elected president. We've talked before about how they intentionally ruined his first term with the impeachment and the nonstop Russia, and the deep state and the undermining and the FBI and the CIA against him. And it's only going to get worse unless Trump is empowered to go in there and put in people who will do what he wants, who will enact the Trump agenda, which, if he's elected again, will have been voted on by the American people. Most normal people understand that's how government should work. There shouldn't be a civil war unspoken internally in the government after a full and free democratic election. But today underscores the lengths to which they will go. And Jesse, you've been on my show enough. We've talked about it, your book. You call the leftists communists, and we've laughed about it, but you've justified why you call them that. And I have to say, I'm feeling that tonight more than ever. Like this, the crazy lunatic left. And yet we don't know whether this guy was Antifa. I've seen the reports you've seen. But that element of the far left is genuinely dangerous and does need to get the January 6th treatment when they engage in violence. And yet they've been treated entirely differently, whether it's in civil lawsuits or in criminal cases, than Meemaw on J6, as you point out.
Well, Megyn, and just a couple things off the top of my head that I can think of that just took place in just the last couple years. The FBI, they kneeled down for George Floyd protests. There's video of this. You can look at pictures of it online. FBI agents in uniform kneeling down before Black Lives Matter. FBI recruiting at Pride events. I know you've probably already talked about this. The slide that was revealed from Fort Bragg, which they now call Fort Liberty because we can't preserve anything in this country. The slide revealing terrorist groups, and the National Right to Life was one of those terrorist groups. This is why I'm so focused on government right now, because the street animals would be nothing with very little law enforcement focus. These groups can be found out, broken up, imprisoned, and taken care of. But this stuff is allowed and oftentimes facilitated by a government that has turned all of its guns inward against its most patriotic citizens. I explain this to people all the time. They're not destroying the FBI. They're not destroying the military. They're building one. They're building one. There's a reason guys like Obama get in there and they fire 100 generals in the first 5 minutes and they promote a bunch of loyalists. There's a reason why they put the vax mandate for the military so quickly to run out anybody ideologically on the right. And then there's a new gay pride parade on an Air Force base. Not that that's unusual for the Air Force. There's a new gay pride parade every 5 minutes on an Air Force base. So you have these guys, anyone who's ideologically on the right, they email my show all the time and say, Jesse, I'm done. I'm getting out. Jesse, I was going to join the Marines. Now I'm not going to join. Jesse, I'm not doing it. And the result of that is the same thing these dirty communist scumbags have done everywhere they've ever taken over. They take all the forces of government, the state police, they take the military, and they fill it up with their loyalists. And they have always, from the Bolshevik Revolution to Cambodia to Spain to you name it, every single time they have done this, they have done it with the intention of turning those guns against their political opponents. And every single time they have done it with the justification that their political opponents are saboteurs or threat to democracy. He'll end democracy. Do you remember, Megyn? I know you do. When Joe Biden gave that evil speech with the red backdrop and he had the Marines behind him. Totally inappropriate to have the Marines there because it was a political speech calling us enemies of democracy, threat to democracy, threat to the foundation of democracy. And the next day, Corinne Diversity Hire, his press secretary, was asked, why were the Marines there? That was inappropriate. And this is what she said verbatim. They were there because they're the defenders of our democracy. People don't want to believe this is the case. I'm telling you right now, the government is the most dangerous thing going on in the world is the government turning its guns against its own citizens. As fervently as this government fought the war on terror during the global war on terror era, of which I was part of, that is as fervently as this government is refocusing its efforts against the right in this country. And if you can't see it, you're blind. We have a major problem on our hands.
Honestly, it's very scary because we've lived this. We've watched the things that you just outlaid, that Merrick Garland's FBI did label parents domestic terrorists and start looking into the ones who showed up at school board meetings to protest the COVID policies or went over their time when they were at the microphone. That actually happened. They did crack down on churches that continued to hold services during COVID. They did take the BLM protesters and Antifa and let them go just as soon as if they were arrested at all, just as soon as they were arrested. And then in the case of many, paid them reparations for the way the police arrested them. Like the police weren't treating them with the kid gloves that were required when they were trying to keep them from burning down police stations, which actually happened, and federal buildings, which they were trying to attack. I mean, this has been our past 2 years.
Megyn, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want everyone to remember how exactly the school board thing came about. This is how it came about. We know this from after the fact. Parents were showing up at school boards. They didn't want the masks on their kids. They were getting angry about all the America sucks, white people are evil crap that's taught in our schools today. So moms and dads were showing up and they were just getting loud at school boards. No violence at all. And we found all this out after the fact from documents that were released. How did it end up these parents were labeled domestic terrorists? The White House, Joe Biden's White House, coordinated with the National Teachers Union to compose a letter. So Joe Biden's White House coordinated with the teachers union to compose a letter. That letter was then sent to Attorney General Merrick Garland, who used the letter composed by the White House as justification to stick the FBI like a bunch of rabid dogs they are after school board parents and counterterrorism heads of the Federal Bureau of Investigation met privately to discuss which terrorist threat label to put on school board parents. The details of the things that you just laid out are 10 times as frightening as the headlines themselves. And that's why I am extremely suspicious about what happened today, extremely suspicious, and we have a big problem on our hands.
I mean, I can't go that far. I think this is going to be some leftist lunatic, but I don't know. Sure. And I've seen, I mean, but like, I know that I don't, whatever, we'll leave it at that. We'll see what happens. I do want to say this, Dan Bongino, former Secret Service, protected Obama, was on the presidential detail, reporting as follows, tweeting on X, U.S. Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle must resign. She was warned about this. She ignored the warnings. And then he doubles down. I want to repeat and can absolutely confirm the U.S. Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle has repeatedly turned down requests for a larger security footprint around President Trump, despite knowing the threat level is catastrophic. Resign tonight. This dovetails somewhat with the reporting from the Federalist, Sean Davis, who said requests had been made by the Trump campaign to increase security and that DHS, which oversees Secret Service, had refused. Dan Bongino saying it was the Secret Service director herself, Kim Cheadle, who said no. Where was she tonight? And what was her role in saying no to additional security for the most threatened man in America? To remind our audience, tonight in Butler, Pennsylvania, the former president of the United States was the target of an attempted assassination. The bullet grazed his ear, inches, if not centimeters away from his brain. At least one person behind him was killed. An emergency room physician who was on site testifying that he attempted to save that person's life and saw that person's brain matter, understanding that they were already gone. A second Trump fan was hit, and as far as we know, and now we've been on the air a few hours, continues to struggle for his or her life in the hospital tonight. I'm sure we'll have updates on them at some point soon. President Trump, by some sort of miracle, is fine and has, we understand, been released from the hospital and is extending his thanks to the Secret Service, as are his family members, Ivanka and Don Jr. among them. This is one of those moments where you need to pray for our nation. We need to pray for us to come together. There was a guy, forgive me, I can't remember his name, Jesse. He wrote the book Bolling Alone back in like 95, right around there, talking about how our society was getting more and more fragmented and isolationist toward each other, staying at home and watching the TV too much, not going out to join the bowling league, right, together. And that it was leading to a real deterioration in mental health, community, country, like the dynamic between oneself and one's mental health and oneself and one's country was precipitously falling. And he was trying to sound the alarm. He recently spoke with, I think it was the Times again, and said, nothing's improved. Nothing's improved. It was just this morning, I think. I think I listened to this morning on their podcast, where he said, I tried to sound the alarm, but it's only gotten worse. You know, it was 6 or 7 years before the iPhone came out that I published. First, it was an article, then it was a book. And we've only gone into our corners more, both in terms of our devices, the way we live our lives, and our politics. Then he got annoying and started to talk about Trump, of course, in a completely inappropriate way. But the underlying point, the first point, is well taken. And, you know, we don't have a lot of moments of unity. The last one I remember, the really big one, it wasn't COVID. That was very politically driven. It was 9/11, where we understood that we were under attack by an outsider and we came together to stand shoulder to shoulder as Americans. This is something different. Because of the things you just outlined, there's been a cauldron of toxicity around not just Trump, but people who vote for Trump, people who love Trump, people who show up at the rallies. Could be an 80-year-old, could be a 20-year-old. And we've allowed it to go on for too long. Again, if this is some Antifa nut or some nut, who knows? There's a difference between causation and correlation. We can't yet go there. But it's too much because we're fragmenting as countrymen, right? It's like we can't even agree on patriotism, loyalty to our nation, saluting the flag, flying the flag. I don't know if this is going to be any sort of a healing moment eventually. Right now, I think people are going to feel like, forgive me for getting, too bellicose, that it's war, right? That it's war, that someone's declared war on President Trump, and that President Trump will be defended, and that his values and his beliefs and the beliefs of his core supporters will be defended. And I pray there's not any escalatory violence.
Well, let's be clear. It is war, but it doesn't need to be the violent kind. It really does not, and it should not be. And I want to caution everyone tonight, as you can probably tell, I'm mad. Megyn's mad. How could you not be mad? I'm a human being. My blood pressure is through the roof right now. Look how friggin' red my face is. But there's nobody for you to go after right now. Nothing for you to do. Pray, be angry, go punch a punching bag somewhere, go to the shooting range if you want to blow off some steam, go for a jog. We don't know details right now. We don't know details about anything. We don't know details about the shooter, and we may never know, the way everyone lies about everything in this freaking country. We don't know anything right now. But you should channel that anger into positive fighting back, digging in. We do now share a country, Megyn, with people who hate it. It was not always this way. If the Democrat Party was not always this way at all. Yeah, guys like JFK were freaking war heroes, almost died for this country. It was not this way at all. A lot of this ties back to Barack Obama and the people he filled the government with. We've never had somebody like that who went and grabbed, normally a Democrat would grab a Democrat city councilman or a Democrat out of this department or that department. We've never had somebody like Obama who went and grabbed the most radical Maoists out of academia and put them in positions of power in the government. It's not an accident we are this divided. They're trying to divide us. That is the entire point. The entire platform now is white people suck and men suck and America sucks and this sucks and that sucks and that. It is intentional. It's intentional to divide us, get us to hate our country, get us to hate each other. I had a very revealing conversation with a Democrat neighbor of mine. He lives in my area. A couple of years ago, I was complaining about the NFL and doing all the kneeling and all the Black Lives Matter stupid stuff that they were doing. And I said, I gave that line that we all probably gave at the time. Why does it have to get political? This isn't political. And he looked at me and he said, what are you talking about? It's always been political. They have the military there. Now, process that in your head, Megyn. Process that. For him, the United States military is political. The defenders of the country is political. Where are we? We are at war. It is a culture war, hopefully, and that's exactly where it needs to stay. But we are at war, and there will only be one victor.
Jesse Kelly, thank you. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for your service, as I always say to you. It's great to see you.
Appreciate you, Megyn.
The author I referred to of Bolling Alone is Robert Putnam. And, one of the points he was making today that was annoying was it started off by saying there are two ties that are important in socialization. One is to people who are like you, and the second is to people who are not like you. And it's the reason he singled out MAGA is because he said, well, they don't pursue number two. They have the bonding that comes with being around people who are like you, but they refuse to reach out beyond MAGA. They demonize people outside of MAGA. Robert Putnam is the author's name. And I laughed when I heard it. I mean, I'm used to, as anybody is, listening to the left demonize the right, and certainly any Trump supporters. But what an absurdity that these core groups they were literally labeled deplorables by the Democratic candidate for president. She made a whole speech about how disgusting they were. As Jesse just pointed out, they're told they're evil because they're men or they're white, period. They're called Karens and made fun of because they're white, and they may break down emotionally at something. That he completely misdiagnoses who's rejecting other, who's refusing to reach across, who's refusing to see a human being on the other side. I think very much their reaction is a reaction to the way they've been treated, and not the ones who drew fire first. Maybe that's the wrong word to use on a night like this. I asked the team to get my next guest as our final guest tonight because he's an old soul and he's extremely learned. And he's one of those guys I always want to hear from when something big has happened in our country. And his name is Dennis Prager of PragerU. He's with us tonight. Dennis, thank you so much for being here. Your reaction.
By the way, I was an old soul when I was a kid, just for the record.
I believe that. Zero chance. I don't believe that.
So I was just listening to your last guest and couldn't agree more. I wrote at least 15 years ago that we're in a civil war, and I wrote in the article, I pray it remains nonviolent. But, you mentioned causality and
correlation,
not necessarily being the issue. And you're entirely right. Sometimes there's causality and sometimes just two things happen at the same time. Correct. But I do believe there's causality. Look, the New Republic, which was once a liberal, magnificent liberal magazine, which is now just another almost Stalinoid organ of the left, has portrayed in its most recent issues Donald Trump as a fascist, as a Hitlerian, as a Nazi. And you can't have it both ways. You can't say that someone is Hitler and then say, oh, gee, why would anybody shoot him? If you, in fact, morality has been my preoccupation all of my life. if you believe someone is Hitler, you are obligated to shoot him. I wish somebody in Germany had shot Hitler in the 1930s. The Holocaust would not have taken place. World War II would not have taken place, not at least not in Europe. So you can't do both. Oh, we have nothing to do with this, even though we keep calling him Hitler. The New York Times just last week repeated the horrible lie that PragerU put out a video 6 years ago that the Charlottesville lie was a lie. It has Steve Cortez did it. It has I don't know, about 10 million views. And it was a lie. He never said that there were fine Nazis. This was a lie of the left.
He said it at the debate in front of 50 million people. President Biden, that was one thing he managed to get out.
That's correct. That is exactly right. And they Snopes, which is not a conservative, quote unquote, fact checker, said just about 2 weeks ago, he never said, it's a lie. The Charlottesville claim is a lie. This is Snopes. And the New York Times repeated it last week, and Joe Biden repeated it a few weeks ago. So you can't have it both ways. Gee, we're shocked. Nobody would kill who's on our side. But if you keep claiming that he's a Nazi and a fascist, do you know that in Louisiana they have decided to enable schools to use PragerU videos in classrooms? And the Democrats of the Louisiana State Senate tried to pass a bill banning PragerU videos from classrooms. And in the bill, I saw it 5 times, PragerU is listed as anti-Semitic. I happen to be a religious Jew.
That's amazing. I mean, we could spend all night talking about the demonization of the right, and it's just fine with them. That's absolutely fine with them. I mean, I cannot imagine what this press would be doing had it been, God forbid, an attempted shooting of President Biden. They would be blaming you and me and Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson and Dan Bongino and Dana Perino. They would blame the blandest, most milquetoast. No offense to Dana, you know what I'm saying? People on the right and the bomb throwers. That's what they would be doing. No one here is blaming that. We don't know what was behind this man's motivation. He might have just been a nutcase. That we've seen as well. Crazy people do crazy things sometimes, and we later find out they never even watched the news. They never even read the news. But it would be irresponsible on a night like this not to lament the growing culture of hatred around this man and his supporters. It has to stop. It was only a matter of time before somebody found themselves in danger. And so we'll find out more about the shooter, undoubtedly, because he's dead. And I'm sure they're pouring through his laptop, his social media, and his friends and family right now. This eyewitness account just in to Fox News. People started screaming. And so we all just hit the ground. And I started looking around at what was going on. I saw one of the Secret Service guys. He was firing back. There were probably 6 or 7 shots total, maybe. And then I woke up in the bleachers and people were just screaming and crying. And there was blood everywhere. There's blood all over his family members. There was a guy up there trying to administer CPR. It just all happened so fast, so quick, like still trying to process everything. And we're just all down on the ground, and people down on the ground are crying. We don't know what to do. People are just screaming and crying. So that's interesting because, that not all of that was on cam. What we saw was some extremely brave, strong people stand up, almost as if they were just not going to let President Trump get shot again. Almost like they were Secret Service in the line of danger, not cowering, which I 100% would have been. And this from Scott McFarlane, who adds from CBS News, he's a reporter there. There were a bunch of kids at this rally today in all sections. Can't unhear those screams. That's one of the things, Dennis, about unleashing this at a Trump rally. You are taking the lives of innocent civilians in your hands, including the lives of the elderly, the weak, the disabled, the children. And of course, to some extent, it would require a man to do such a thing.
Well, it's a rare case of where I might differ with you. I don't think it requires a madman. If you believe Trump is Hitler, I would think a completely rational even conscience-driven human being would try to kill him. If I were German and I could go back in time, I would have tried to kill Hitler, and I'm not a madman. There are times where there is such spectacular evil that is your only choice. As I say, you can't call him Hitler. You can't call us fascists and then say, oh, gee, why would anybody shoot you? It's one or the other.
I talked moments ago with Jesse Kelly about this. I mean, really, it wasn't earth-shattering, but there was a moment on the BBC where this actor who was on when I was on casually made reference to Trump being a child molester, that there were allegations he was no, not true. That was one of those, online forums. If you're really on the leftist left and you dig down deep, you can find things like that. No, and there was somebody claiming, not him, but somebody claiming that the Washington Post or the AP had also reported it. No, in any event, there was no massive scandal around it. Nobody lost their job. It wasn't even a thing. I didn't even see it in the news thereafter. I mean, I corrected it live on the air. Then this just out. Okay, it was 2 weeks ago, my friend Dan Wooten calling my attention to it. The BBC presenter, that's what they call them over there, David Aronovich, just 2 weeks ago, called for Joe Biden to, quote, have Trump murdered. There was no pushback from the media elite or the establishment who considered the comments completely acceptable. Just looking at the actual tweet sent out by David Aronovich. If I was Biden, I'd hurry up and have Trump murdered on the basis that he is a threat to America's security. Hashtag SCOTUS. This is unbelievable. Like, I'm in the news, but there's only so much you can digest on a day-to-day basis. It's absolutely stunning that people have been actually, there's not even any subtlety to it, Dennis. The New Republic with the faces merged, the Washington Post with the two men merged and saying, yes, he's Hitler. This guy with the BBC. I'm saying in the UK, you get fired for saying, oh, I don't want to have sex with that particular woman. And yet you can say Biden should have Trump murdered and you're good. It's just, it's a powder keg and it's boiling.
So my field of study, which I never, ever imagined in my wildest dreams would be relevant to the United States, was communism. At the Columbia School of International Affairs, the Russian Institute, I learned Russian. I went to the Soviet Union a number of times. I went to Eastern European communist countries repeatedly. And I know that world really well. As I said, I never thought any of this would be applicable to my beloved America. But it was started by Stalin. Stalin called Trotsky. Trotsky, along with Lenin, was the architect of the Bolshevik Russian Revolution. And Trotsky eventually vied with Stalin for power after Lenin died in 1924. And then fled to Mexico. Stalin sent an assassin to kill Trotsky, and he was killed. He called Trotsky a fascist. The left, not liberals, the left has always done this. If you oppose the left, you are not opposition, you are not conservative, you are not even just right wing. You are a fascist and later a Nazi. This is universal. This is what the left does. I hate saying this, and again, I always draw a distinction between left and liberals. Liberals vote for the left. That is their shame, but they are not leftists. In fact, they're conservative. They're much closer to our values than to left-wing values. But the left does this and has always done this. If you oppose them, you're a Nazi.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I told my audience, some of the people I love most on earth are Democrats. They're normal Democrats. They would never cheer an event like this. They would never want an event like this. They don't like the rhetoric about President Trump. They don't like President Trump, but they don't like this demonization and the Hitler-esque figure and all that nonsense. But there is a group within the party that is rabid, absolutely rabid. Again, we'll find out who was behind this shooting. We do not yet know whether.
The beautiful Democrats in your family and in my family, not my immediate, praise the Lord, My wife and kids are share my values, which is a great source of joy in my life. But I have wonderful family members in my extended family, and they're not leftists. None of them are. They don't believe that men menstruate. They think the idea is preposterous. But they vote for the people who do say that, and that's a shame.
Yeah, I know. Here's an extraordinary thing that just crossed my phone. Okay, I read the statement that President Trump put out tonight, talking about how he wanted to thank the Secret Service, law enforcement for their response. He wanted to extend his condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed and the other one who's been hurt. I'm trying to read my phone. It's blurry because this screen grab's blurry. It's incredible such an act can happen in this country. Nothing is known at this time about the shooter. I was shot with a bullet that pierced part of my ear, and so on. And then says, much bleeding took place. So I realized that when it was happening. And then he says, God bless America. Here was the reaction from Margaret Brennan at CBS News.
He closes with God bless America, and we saw him raise his hand in the air defiantly, blood on his face as he left the stage.
He is recovering from these injuries now. This was a traumatic event, no doubt, for him. But I did notice there was no call for lowering the temperature, condemning all political violence, and really trying to signal to his supporters as well not to retaliate or to have any kind of escalation here. I just am looking at these statements.
There's a belief in his inner circle that he's under siege.
I understand.
Being attacked at his rally. And so there's a lot of every text message I'm getting.
Will exactly digest it like you're saying.
I mean, every single text message, literally every single one from Trump sources is outraged and shocked. And so that is certainly the mood inside the highest ranks of the Republican Party, speaking to CBS News tonight. And he closes with God bless America. And we saw him raise his hand.
Oh my God. Is she fucking kidding me? I'm sorry, Dennis, but is she fucking kidding? Trump almost got his head blown off tonight. And he needs to go out there and say, let's lower the temperature. The man is recovering from an attempted assassination. One person is dead. Another one may be struggling for their life behind him. The shooter's also dead. And Trump needs to be saying, now's a good time. He's thinking about thanking the people who saved his life and telling people his status and saying, God bless America. Maybe he'll get around to keep the temperature low when the blood has stopped.
Well, the whole thing is projection. The temperature is what it is. When I spoke at Arizona State University a little over a year ago, 34 professors signed a petition that nobody should go to my speech. I spoke there and Charlie Kirk spoke there. And it was, how can you go to these haters? You should not hear these bigots and these haters. And Charlie Kirk, do you know what Charlie Kirk, he spoke before I did. His half-hour speech at Arizona State was about why, as a Christian, he has come to observe the Sabbath. That was his whole speech. That was the hate-filled speech that he gave. But it doesn't matter. Again, people have to understand, if you oppose the left, all tactics may be used, all words, all rhetoric may be used to crush you. That's the left doesn't debate. I invited all 34 professors onto my national radio show. I will give them millions of listeners. And I said, how about even giving me 15 minutes in one of your classrooms? And of course, crickets. They don't debate. They destroy.
That is just next level. I mean, she actually thinks a man within moments of having an assassination attempt unleashed on him needs to be calling for us to lower the temperature. Give him a minute to get his head put back together, Margaret. I'm sure he'll get around to it. But you know what the truth is? These Democrats, these leftists here, they're probably 2 weeks away from blaming whatever happens next on Donald Trump. They're going to pull out that statement and say it was incitement and blame him for it, the same way as please go peacefully and march on the Capitol got turned into, falsely, incitement under the law. Donald Trump is a human being. He's allowed to have a minute before he thinks about what to tell his supporters about how to behave. And you know what else? They're entitled to their anger right now. I hope they don't. I pray they don't do any return violence. I urge them not to. But they're absolutely entitled to feel enraged tonight, Dennis. I feel it too.
Well, you're talking to a kindred spirit. I've been enraged for all of my lifetime about what the left has done to Western civilization and what the left did to any country it took over. I have a video up at PragerU, and I only do 1 out of 10 videos. 90% are other people doing these videos, these 5-minute videos. And it is, why don't people hate communism as much as Nazism? It's the left has gotten a moral pass for all of its history. And this is just another example. You can say the man is Hitler and get away with it. You can say that he inspired an insurrection. Do you know that I condemned it? It happened, I'll never forget, in the last 20 minutes of my radio show. And I said, this is awful. I condemned the entering of the Capitol. The next day, though, I also added to that, and I said, I know what's going to happen. The left will use this the way in which the Germans used the Reichstag fire as an excuse to suppress liberty in the United States. They used it then in Germany, and they will use it now here. And that's exactly what has happened. It has been used by the DOJ to suppress liberty in America. Who suppresses dissent in the United States or almost anywhere? Conservatives or leftists? Of course we have a right. We don't have a right to be angry. We have a moral duty.
Yes. They ruined his first term by calling him illegitimate from day one, including Hillary Clinton. They spent 4 years accusing him falsely of colluding with the Russians and being some sort of Manchurian candidate. They impeached him over a BS phone call, accusing him of doing something we would later learn the current president, Joe Biden, was effectively doing when it comes to Ukraine, according to the allegations, trading favors for corrupt purposes. They impeached him a second time as he was on his way out of office. They changed the law in New York State to get him so that E. Jean Carroll could resurrect a 30-year-old claim she didn't even know she had. She couldn't remember the year in which he allegedly sexually assaulted her in a Bergdorf Goodman dressing room. And sure enough, she brought the case, funded by Democrat activists, and won ultimately $80 million because Trump not only denied it, but continued to say, I don't even know who that is. A left-wing judge slapped him with a liability verdict after the jury so found, and a defamation claim that made people's eyes open as the woman celebrated it on MSNBC, saying she was going to buy Rachel Maddow Paris, France. They brought a nearly $500 million case against his business over some BS fraud claim that not a single bank who was allegedly defrauded complained about, and shut down, essentially, the Trump operation in the state of New York. They filed a criminal indictment against a sitting former president of the United States for the first time in our nearly 250-year history for a bookkeeping error at best that he put into an accounting book that no one saw about his hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. They indicted him again down in Florida for taking presidential records that Joe Biden also took, though he'd never been president, so he was not able to declassify anything. Same offense, he didn't get charged. Trump facing charges down there. They indicted him over January 6th, the same thing that he got impeached over, but they wouldn't actually convict him, a thing the Democrats could not let go of. That claim has now been all but gutted by the U.S. Supreme Court, saying you were out of line. And then they indicted him in Georgia by a corrupt prosecutor down there who couldn't keep her legs together long enough to bring the case without creating a massive conflict of interest for herself. And she's now about to be bumped off that case on appeal. What happens next? He's on his way to getting the nomination. Joe Biden is infirm, as we all saw at that debate. The panic button has officially been hit on the Democratic side, and Trump has never been more of a threat. And now tonight, after calling him Hitler on newspaper magazines and in formally respected newspapers, they sit and they say, really, he should tone down the rhetoric? Really, he should be calling for his side to behave better. You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me.
They're not kidding you. This is the way they operate. As I have said all of my life, truth is not a left-wing value. Back to the Soviet Union. First thing Lenin did was to found a newspaper, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. I learned Russian in order to be able to read that newspaper. It was called Pravda. Pravda is the Russian word for truth. And from then to this day, truth is what the left says it is. There is no objective truth. The most famous philosopher in Italy died 6 months ago. And his entire raison d'etre, his entire philosophy of life was that we live in a post-truth era. And he called himself, he said, I am gay, I am Catholic, and I am a communist. And that was his whole outlook. We are in a post-truth era. And for the left, it has always been a post-truth era. That is why they could say for 2 years that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. The purpose on the left is to crush your opponents. Truth is an irrelevance. Indeed, no, better. Truth is an obstacle.
Right, right. That's what this postmodern approach to everything is. There's really no truth. Everything needs to be redesigned. We'll figure it out. Who cares? 1619 is really what the country's all about, maintaining slavery. We're just going to say, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, right? We've just abandoned truth because truth is racist, truth is sexist, truth is anti-trans rights. And the rational middle has said, just no, all of that is a failure and false. And really, the country is finding its voice on those things. The left is losing. I'll add this. Nicole Shanahan, who is RFKJ's running mate, out with a very strong statement tonight. And he had a good statement earlier. It's just been lost in the texts that have been coming into me. But listen to what she says. When we treat our political rivals like they are the enemy of the state, we radicalize our country. I'm very glad Trump is safe. The demonization of his image by the DNC and legacy media, keep in mind, this is a Democrat, is responsible for the hysteria that is ripping this country apart. Now, having been on the receiving end of the DNC's campaign of lies, I know most of what they've said about Trump's danger, in quotes, is an absolute falsehood. My heart breaks for the family of the individual whose life was lost at the rally in such a violent way. Let this be a lesson to all political leaders. When you dehumanize your opponent and radicalize your base, you are responsible for the violence that inevitably ensues.
That's a great statement,
Nicole.
That's very impressive. And I'm not surprised. Robert Kennedy Jr., whom I've come to know, and like other Americans have, I didn't really know about him until the last couple of years. And I've had him on my fireside chat. I've had him on my show. And I will say, this man, whatever you think of any given view, this man, I believe, and I put my own reputation on the line saying this, he is committed to telling the truth. That truth, the New Testament says that love of money is the root of evil, and it is certainly a root. But I believe the greatest single root is lies. That is the one thing that you can predict perfectly. When truth is no longer an issue, And enabling men to compete against women in women's sports is a denial of truth. They are not women. End of issue. They may say they are, and they may deserve our respect and our sympathy and our compassion, but they're not women, and they certainly cannot compete with women in women's sports. When you have gotten to that point where children's hospitals will say, oh, yes, you're 15 and you say you're a boy, then perhaps we will remove your breasts. And that is the root of the crisis that we are in. But they get away with it. The New York Times gets away with it. They should be called on this Charlottesville issue. It's a big deal to continue this lie. And by the way, when they speak about rhetoric, people should read Joe Biden's inaugural address. It was the most hate-filled inaugural address in American history. They should compare that to Trump's inaugural address. Give it to people and try if you could find a neutral person in America. Say, which one seems to have more hate in it? The discussing white supremacy in his inaugural address, it was a despicable address. He's an awful man, in my opinion. It has nothing to do with dementia. His character is defective. And that is where the horrible rhetoric comes from. And by the way, if it weren't Biden, then it would be Kamala Harris. It doesn't matter who it is. For no one on the left, liberals, yes, but for no one on the left is truth a value, and it has never been, as I pointed out, since Lenin and Stalin. And people don't want to recognize this. I understand that. I have said all of my life, the analogy of evil to dark is not correct. Evil is not dark. It's easy to look into the dark. Evil is so bright, people don't want to stare at it. You know, when I knew I wasn't a leftist, I thought I was a liberal for much of my life. And in many ways, I still am, ironically. That's why I'm called a conservative, because I have liberal values. But in any event, I knew it in high school when I realized, wow, the left doesn't hate communism. Wow, if you don't hate evil, and that's my favorite verse in the Bible, I'm writing a Bible commentary. The 5th volume is coming out next year, called The Rational Bible. And I know biblical Hebrew like I know English. My favorite verse in the Bible is, those of you who love God must hate evil. Hebrew has a command form in its verbs. It is a command. If you don't hate evil, you don't love God.
The president of the United States, just in the past couple of weeks, as you point out, has called Trump an enabler of white supremacy. That's the lie about the Charlottesville thing, which has been debunked over and over. He was allowed to say it from the debate stage in front of 50 million people, doubled down on it days later. He's called him a rapist. That happened days ago, as he's fine-tuning his rhetoric, trying to amp up the nastiness about Trump, because he's in a downward spiral thanks to his mental state. He said, we have to go out and it's time to put Trump in the bullseye, and has been, of course, calling him a dictator over and over and over, saying that's what we will get, and we will get the end of democracy. So I don't really care that the latest news is he's just spoken with Donald Trump. This just crossing the wires, that President Biden and former President Trump have spoken, according to the White House. Fine. That is literally the bare minimum that this president should be doing for Donald Trump, right? I don't really care, but for what it's worth, that's just crossed the wires. And at least he did the right thing.
My side and I will no longer call him a fascist or a Nazi. That's all. That's what I wanted to say. A phone call to Donald Trump is sweet and irrelevant. That's all he needs to say. We're stopping calling him a Nazi. We may think that he's not good for the country. We may think a whole host of things about him, but that is the root of the problem.
Miranda Devine of the New York Post tweeted out the following: all of the violent rhetoric comes from the anti-Trump side. Don't tell us to lower the temperature. You control the temperature dial, and you turned it up to the max. So well said. Dennis, thank you.
She's
thank
terrific.
you so much. It's great to see you.
And you're terrific. Thank
She's
you.
the best.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you soon. You know, all of this has me thinking about President Trump, 78 years old, independently wealthy, though they're trying to stop that too, as I pointed out. And he's been through the ringer, my God, before tonight, he's been through the ringer for this country over the past 8-9 years. You know, he was the host of the #1 television program in America. The Apprentice was crushing it. And he was the reason. As soon as they tried to use another host, it went down the tubes. He could have just stayed doing that. He was beloved. He wasn't as controversial. He didn't have to get into politics, but he did. And he's stayed in politics. He's been president. Why would he run again? Just, right? Like, who would do such a thing? Just go back to your private life and your beautiful wife and your children, your grandchildren, and your golf courses. Why put yourself through this? Why continue engaging with these people who hate you and want to destroy you? And you know it. That was the final question of my interview with Trump in September. And here's what he said. You could be going into your 78th year, enjoying this beautiful golf course, Mar-a-Lago, your lovely family.
No.
You don't have to be running for president, sitting for 4 criminal trials, some civil, and possibly looking at jail time.
No.
Is it worth it?
Yeah. Make America great again. Our country's going to hell. Our country's going down. You don't realize it. I don't believe you realize it, but our country's going down. Our country, and I used to say we're going to end up being, if we don't do certain things, we're going to end up being Venezuela on steroids. How about we're buying oil now from Venezuela? How about that? We're making Venezuela rich. Okay, think of it. The people running Venezuela, which were total enemies, what we're doing is so crazy. We're not using our oil. We're making Venezuela rich. But the country, I believe, has one last chance, and that's this. This is the most important election we've ever had.
I believe Donald Trump genuinely loves his country, not just himself, as his detractors say. I believe that's why he is running again, despite all of it, all the things that have happened to him. He doesn't deserve what the left has done to him, and he certainly didn't deserve what happened to him today. And the people who love him, who saw the magic in his message, in his persona, and responded to the way he made them feel, which was seen and heard for the first time in decades. Someone who, though he had become of the elites, rejected elitism and said to the men and women of Appalachia, I get it. I see you. I see what happened to your manufacturing jobs, and I'll fight for you. I'll stand up to China. I'm not going to lean into the free trade thing. I'm going to talk about possible tariffs. I'm going to do some radical things that President Biden would wind up continuing, though he criticized Trump mightily for them at the time. And they knew in their gut that this guy was different. That's why they surprised everybody. They shocked the world in November of 2016 and put him in office and remained that loyal to him ever since. Is he a perfect man? No. Was he a perfect president? No. Is he guilty of rhetoric that can be controversial? Of course. We know these things about President Trump. But he's a special man. There's not a lot of guys like this, not a lot of human beings like this, with that kind of strength and resilience and ability literally under fire to stand up and say, fight. It was inspirational. I believe President Trump is going to win in November. I've previously disclosed he will have my vote. And I am now one of the people who will walk over broken glass to make sure I cast my vote. And I know I won't be alone. I think now you are going to see formerly blue states rush to pull the lever for Donald Trump. I thought it was bad before tonight. And I think my fellow Americans will understand how important it is to send a message loud and clear to the people who want to change our country that we won't allow it, that we are not going to lose sight of one another. We're not going to continue trying to ruin each other, end each other. That's not how we want to live. that we will find our way back to one another. Tens of thousands of people showed up tonight in Butler, Pennsylvania to show their support for a presidential candidate, and some maybe just to listen to him. The kids don't know. They just wanted to see the former president. That's a uniquely American thing, the way we do things in this country. And he's such a character. Maybe they just wanted to go for the fun, or because they wanted to hear what he had to say, the way I do with my kids. Or I say, listen to this speech. What do you think? Let's get a glimpse of him. What did you hear? What's your reaction? They showed up and they ran for their lives instead in Butler, Pennsylvania. And after Mr. Trump was removed in the Beast and two of his most ardent fans were shot dead or within an inch of their life, the American flag still waved. The remnants at the site, bottles and so on, scattered the ground. And yet, much like 9/11, after it was all over, the American flag still waved over a now empty area. That's what it's all about. Our flag was still there. We're still there. We're still with each other. I just said this on July 4th. We are so lucky to have been born in this country. We hit the lottery. Our patriotism must be reignited for America. And yes, our understanding that there's humanity on both sides. The hard partisan loons who have been behind the rhetoric we've discussed tonight do not represent either side. And there is room for a reconnection. But I'll tell you what, President Trump needs to win this election. Period. President Trump needs to win this election. It's not about him anymore. It's about us. And so I hope you'll vote, and I hope you'll vote Republican. And I hope you'll say a prayer for President Trump and his family, and indeed for President Biden and our elected leaders. Thank you for being with us tonight. God bless you, and God bless America.